Hello, everybody. It is John Pollock and Wai Ting live just moments after AEW's All In event, or as I like to call it, the go home for All Out.
I guess you could call it that.
I can't believe we're doing this again next weekend.
Yes. Well, get used to it. I feel like this is next year. It might be a similar schedule.
Let's talk about that right off the top. At the end of the show, they announced that they have booked Wembley Stadium for August 25th of 2024. So, I mean, certainly you look at the response to this. What do you think about not so much continuing All In as a stadium event, but going to the same building, the same market a second year in a row? Do you just look at the success of this show and let's try it again? Like this was a big success for year one. Or do you think that this could have been something like you tour, like your big WrestleMania stadium event?
Yeah, it certainly was surprising to me. You know, we know Tony Khan loves his sort of annual destinations, and I didn't think that at 80,000 plus arena would be one of those yearly destinations. But when you look at the business of this particular event, I mean, it kind of makes all the sense in the world to try to replicate it. Even if you're not going to beat this record, I have to imagine even, at partial capacity, this has been a more than incredibly profitable night for this company.
And the attention now goes to next weekend and what impact this has on coming back 7 days later with another pay-per-view. And do you continue that Labor Day tradition next year? They might not even know that answer until they see how next weekend goes. But to our discussion earlier this week, it's not like you came out of this show and you had an automatic idea of what is the big match for next weekend. That remains to be seen. And I would say unless they do anything on social media, you're talking about a couple day build that starts on Wednesday for what I would say are the money matches on this card, which it does not have any of yet.
Or the press conference, which we should add is going on presently. So we will be updated hopefully, throughout the evening in case any sort of breaking news occurs. But I have to imagine, the build is starting probably right this second.
The press conference, the big build. Well, we are going to be getting into the show, and then we will be opening it up. If anyone wants to call in, the StreamYard link has been sent out to our members at postwrestlingcafe.com, which is your way to get all of our bonus shows each and every week and to help support Post Wrestling on a weekly basis. So you can go check out that. Let us get into the show, and then there are many news stories that will come out of that. A lot to cover on this particular event. And when it comes to those calling in, I would love to hear if anyone attended the show in London and any of the shows this weekend. I did not get to see all of it, but I saw most of the Rev Pro card, but you also had a Progress running, a lot going on in the UK. So unless everybody that was at the show is now off to the Grapple and Poison Rana after party.
Could be. Love to hear from people.
Show your ticket stub and you get in free.
Yes.
So this show, if these many hours was not enough, they actually started the pre-show an hour earlier than advertised. So at 11 a.m. Eastern time, Renee Paquette was going on live with Paul White, Anthony Ogogo, and Kip Sabian. And this was, they were set up like well up in the perch, very famous backdrop if you are a football fan. And Renee Paquette opened up the broadcast with a quote from Wyndham Rotunda of his "Wrestling is not a love story. It's a fairy tale for masochists," and a very nice tribute to open the show and other tributes that would be dispersed throughout the show for both Terry Funk and Wyndham Rotunda.
Yeah, maybe nothing within like the, like a grand gesture, that was a part of the show itself, but throughout the wrestling, you did have little callbacks and here and there.
I mean, for the House of Black entrance, I mean, that was a pretty, with the lantern, I mean, that was a pretty...
Oh, okay. I completely missed that. So
Buddy Matthews came out with a lantern. Yeah.
Okay.
And placed it down. So that was a pretty significant one in there. But yeah, a bunch of Terry Funk spots. We'll get into that. And dude, if there's a sub theme to this show, it was Tony Khan open his Spotify playlist and dude, spending. We thought, okay, he got Machine Head for the show. Okay. He got Queen. He got a Metallica song, and not even like the like WCW like kind of ripoff one it was like the full Metallica Seek and Destroy that he got for Sting's entrance.
It's not the live version. Yeah.
I mean, this was, and Tony Khan has always gotten these songs like in perpetuity as well for the future like broadcast of these shows. So I mean, we said there was a Sports Business Journal article that came out today, and it was estimated that the cost of renting Wembley was somewhere in the neighborhood of like $400,000 to $500,000. But I mean, this event is expected to gross a ton of money, obviously. But this was, it was a sizable undertaking for this company of just, and the amount of money that was put in that we don't have a dollar figure of stuff like music rights and all of the marketing behind the event to promote this. It's without question the biggest show in company history. I would say the by far the biggest day in the company's history, and that's including like its launch, everything. I think this is whatever your next phase of AEW. This is what this show would represent to people.
Agreed.
So throughout the 2-hour pre-show, I mean, there was a contract signing with Powerhouse Hobbs and Miro setting up a next weekend's match, and Miro just cutting a promo on Hobbs and a pull apart. Tony Schiavone was in the ring and then interrupted by Jeff Jarrett and company. And this was our first of many just heel tactics against the UK fans, calling them wankers. And that Jarrett said, it's the American wrestlers that paved the way for this event. This was pretty much Jeff Jarrett in this was like a Triple A Jeff Jarrett in Mexico, only his he was attacking the UK fans in his promo, said that this is not because of Big Daddy or Haystacks. It was or Haystacks Calhoun. It was or a local yokel program like World of Sport. It's because of the Crockett's and the Grahams. And this leads to Paul White coming out with Anthony Ogogo and Grado. And if there was any maybe discipline on the Tony Khan music spending spree, he put his foot down at Madonna, I guess.
For a kickoff show, I think that would be a pretty wise, saving of the budget.
Well, you could argue why Grado was on this to begin with.
I mean, who knows at this point, like what original plans might have been. I get the sense that maybe, speculation that a Grado Jeff Jarrett match was actually going to occur might have been overblown. Why he was on the show, maybe just to kind of play off maybe some online fervor as it relates to Jeff Jarrett and Grado.
Well, regardless, it just resulted in the heels all being laid out and Grado getting his receipt in by nailing Jeff Jarrett with a guitar shot. But just quick angle for the show. And RJ City was the roving reporter throughout Wembley Stadium, which was a lot of fun. And then we go to our first match of many, Aussie Open against MJF and Adam Cole for the ROH tag titles. And Aussie Open, great heel tactic at the beginning. They cut off the Adam Cole Bebe, and this crowd was so angry. Like, you're going to make us wait 5 hours to get that Adam Cole Bebe out later. So they attacked them, hit the collider on the floor. And this was such a simple match. It was about two things. It was about the kangaroo kick, and it was about the double clothesline. And when are we going to get the two most simple moves on the show that are going to generate among the biggest reactions of the show? And we teased MJF's dive, which ended up being a tease throughout the night involving the two matches with MJF and Cole. Finally, MJF lands the kangaroo kick, and this was pretty much him jumping in the air and drop kicking both simultaneously.
Yeah, basically a drop kick. But got the biggest reaction.
He got up. He did a kip up and then shook the ropes. And dude, this place went insane. Okay, They call for the double clothesline. They hit the double clothesline on Kyle Fletcher, and they pin him in 7 minutes. They win the tag titles, and that's it. MJF hoists up his title belt as him and Cole have the face off, and that's it. We would see them in the main event. Pretty simple, and the story is that they are now ROH tag champions, and more to come in the main event.
Mm-hmm. When this match was announced, I mean, I like most people thought it was really peculiar. Not often would you see this sort of thing on a pre-show. And I wondered if they were slotting it here as some way to really kind of like build tensions into the main event, and it really didn't deliver that. What it did was basically set up the further continuation of this tag team. It was more of a setup for the future rather than a setup for tonight. And I thought it was perfectly fine. Like you might have expected maybe something like this on an episode of Dynamite prior, to decide to feature it on a big stage like this in the pre-show, maybe even as a way to hook other viewers onto watching the pay-per-view, I think is like a fine business idea, and I would even say successful. They certainly took no risk here, no unnecessary risk. It was a very dark match level type of match. No dives, minimal bumps, relying a lot on crowd work and personality, which they did a great job of laying the foundation for in the weeks leading up to this. And again, you can't blame them for that. They completely earned this great reaction this match got through the continued teasing of the kangaroo kick, and then of course the double clothesline as well.
Considering this was a show that was going to have a very prominent involvement of Bryan Danielson, Jamie Hayter, Pac, I could certainly see this being one that maybe Tony Khan was very hands-on in that this was going to be, the safest match you were going to see on this show, and we were not going to risk anything for later. And then not so much of a surprise, because there were photos of her that she posted herself before conveniently deleting being in London. And there is Mercedes Moné that was shown in the crowd and was there presumably for the whole show, because there were cutaways to her later on in the card. And I thought that this was going to set up to some challenge or anything. We did not get that on the show, but super popular every time they showed her, and people buzzing. Like it's like they're certainly building to maybe something very, very quickly with her.
It seems like it. I mean, the commentary seemed to indicate as much. It almost like if you listen to the commentary, they're almost indicating her as putting the locker room on notice or something to that extent. And I think there's a good chance that prior to her injury, this was going to be the destination for Mercedes anyway, eventually ending up in AEW at some point. But this was pretty much about as blatant of like, hey, like this, it's the takeover. Who's in the front row, of a spot as you could get with Mercedes.
Yeah, I don't want to get into the trap of criticizing something before it even happens. But I mean, if the destination is her and Saraya, like there's so much history there with, Saraya's injury and everything. I would hope that that's not something that's just thrown together for next weekend, where it's
Mercedes.
Yeah.
Do we even know if she's ready to come back from injury?
I mean, it's been several months at this point. It's remains to be seen, but that's going to be.
I mean, if that was the case, I would have expected them to do maybe something. I thought it was weird how they didn't really cut back to her during the women's match itself. They
cut back to her during the House of Black match when Julia Hart got involved.
Well, maybe that's her first target.
Mm-hmm. Well, we will see what is next for her. Lexi Nair interviewed Dr. Britt Baker. This was a pretty good promo. She says the women's division has been complacent and it's been cruising along the path that she paved. And she's like, what's up? Why do we only get one match per show in the same segment? She didn't say that part, but lists off her accolades and admits she felt complacent and allowed herself to take a back seat and assume that someone would rise to the occasion. But there's only one me, and I'm here to show everyone I'm the baddest bitch on the block. Tonight we make history, and I leave as champion, and a new era begins. So I thought this was a nice promo from Baker. Jim Ross then joined Excalibur and Taz for the second half of the 0 Hour and the first couple of matches on the pay-per-view. Jack Perry against Hook, which is probably going to be one of the more discussed matches, but not for the reasons that you would assume going into this, which is Hook bringing the FTW title back to the family after nearly being retired on Collision on Saturday night. So Jack Perry is chauffeured to the ring in a limo, which Jim Ross downplays that, well, it's not a stretch limo. It's not as big of a limo as it could be. And Taz notes, well, it does have 6 doors. It's still pretty big. JR was saying how, Jack Perry's going to hear it from some of the guys backstage that it's not a stretch limo.
Wow.
What a nitpick. So the match begins near the entrance and it's no rules. So Hook is attacking him and runs Jack Perry into the open door of the limo and then suplexes him onto the roof, which thankfully didn't give way, like the JBL Undertaker gimmick roof in Toronto. Remember that one?
No, not at this point. But
well, Perry takes a fisherman suplex onto the windshield and Perry slices his arm, and we've also got Hook with a wound on his shoulder. And the key moment is Jack Perry.
Well, before that, you had a wonderful rolling thunder through the on top of the roof.
These are what limos are made for.
Oh, yeah, you can't do this on a minivan.
But would the spot have looked more impressive if he had more runway on a stretch limo?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So Jack Perry looks into the camera and says, "Real glass, go cry me a river." Obviously a reference to Justin Timberlake. And no?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I listened to this and I was like, I cannot fathom that this dude on this show, this is like what's on your mind to get your little line in on television. And this is before any of the story breaks. I was just like, I'm writing this down and I was saying the worst thing is all of these stupid little lines that have to be, it's like all these little zingers that we've got to get in all these different references across everyone, from the counterfeit Bucks to the Bucks and Omega doing their biting spots and the tripping up on the buckshot layer, like all these little things where it's like we've got to do our little nod to like the smallest audience out there. And
I don't know if it's that small, John.
It's obviously not that small. And well, in terms of just all of this stuff. And so within a half hour, Sean Ross Sapp reports that there was, and PW Insider as well, reporting that there was a backstage incident involving Jack Perry and CM Punk. And for the backstory here, because I'm sure not everyone is up to speed here, this relates to an incident involving Jack Perry and CM Punk on a collision weeks back when Jack Perry was set to go on. He had a vacation scheduled and he was going to do some kind of angle and wanted to use real glass. And allegedly CM Punk thought like this was a poor idea, basically. And so this gets out, and this is the reference that Perry is referring to here in the middle of this match. And then they get to the back and we're going to hear conflicting stories of who did what. I'm less concerned about parsing through who did what happened. There was an incident, and wherever you want to place blame, go for it. I'm so way past just trying to figure this all out, but it's just a never ending bit of drama that, as I said weeks ago, just get used to this continuing to happen. This is going to happen on a regular basis, and we're going to have our regular players involved, and the stuff is going to continue. And it's just unbelievable to me that this is a thing on like this giant show for them, and this is going to be a story coming out of it. But I'm beyond exhausted on this stuff.
Right. Yeah. I thought like the line was actually clever, you know, to take advantage of something that has been discussed heavily online. There happened to be a glass spot in this particular match, and to draw reference to it as sort of like, hey, like a meta referential, like sort of like nod to a controversy that's out there. I thought it was well done, and I would have also,
like there's these real issues going on.
Stop. I would have expected that something like this would have been cleared with all parties that might have been insulted.
Yes, because there's been such a sterling history of all these lines.
Well, do you blame me for thinking that something like that might be changed, you know, at a time when things are as sensitive as they might be right now?
No, because I think that it's clearly been shown time after time after time that these things are not respected. And
okay, so then what do you blame? I don't necessarily blame the spot itself. I blame the fact that some of these issues still haven't really been settled in the back, and that people, whoever they are, can feel emboldened enough to engage in physical contact on a show in the backstage area, you know, because they had a difference of you know, opinion on a creative issue, or maybe even the fact that something like this was able to take place on air without it being signed off on.
Yeah, I would say, listen, there's obviously Jack Perry felt like this was something I needed to get into. First of all, at the very base level, it's like we're making just a reference that, like, yeah, you would think like we're just using fake glass here in the middle of our like hardcore match, that we're like in the body of the show. I think it just is like, it just kind of interrupts the flow right there. On top of it all, like this is involving this individual in CM Punk that it's like all this stuff is around. So it's like we're just going to continue to poke things. And that does not mean that he is owed like some confrontation in the back. But again, all of this is going to continue. And the fact that like this was necessary, that this line had to be used in this moment and on the air, and it's not cleared ahead of time, and we're not working towards anything, and it's not a story that we're going to be making any money off of. It was just, let me get my little dig in, and then there was a blow up. And are we surprised that there was a blow up? I don't think we should be at this point, rightly or wrongly.
I mean, obviously, CM Punk, if these reports are true, he would have taken it as a dig at himself. I also feel like you could interpret it simply as Jack Perry making a dig at something that was a story involving him. It was a story that I think was also very critical of Jack Perry. I think Punk, I would say most agreed with CM Punk. Again, if the story is true, that why would you want to use real glass? It's the stupidest thing.
Yeah, on its own, I don't think most people would have disagreed with
right.
Punk's opinion.
So Jack Perry saying a line like this, I almost took it as much as to be able to say, all you people who criticize me for wanting to use real glass, well, I'm going to use real glass. Wink, wink. Not in a million years.
You got us.
What?
I don't know.
Well, not in a million years that I think any sort of physical confrontation would come out of it, nor did I feel like, somebody like Punk would get offended by it, because I don't even necessarily feel like it was targeted to him. But obviously, Cry Me a River, part of this is also playing heel. I didn't think it was egregious, but I mean, also that's also under the impression that everything was cleared with all parties involved afterwards. But the fact that we even have to walk on eggshells to throw in a little meta referential line in the middle of a wrestling match, I think is pretty silly already.
On its foundation way, I wouldn't disagree with you, but it's all of these meta referential lines that have blown up to be these giant issues, and you have people throwing rocks in fake glass houses, where that's unfortunately what all of this stuff has blown up to, from the workers' rights line that was exactly designed to be something that they actually were in a feud and building to a match, and look what that erupted into. And we can go through all of them, of these little lines, these little things where we're trying to convey realism. And this was one where, yeah, maybe on its own, okay, cool. It's a nod for an audience. I think a much smaller audience than maybe you think are really getting this, and we're not going anywhere with it. So what was the purpose of it? And again, it's just, you have such a sensitive environment, and it's just the latest thing. But this is only a symptom of the greater problem, that all of this exists. And anyway, to that point, PW Insider reporting that Jack Perry was told to leave the venue after there was whatever this altercation was, and how physical it got or did not get. And Punk, and this is happening 10 minutes before Punk's match as well, because they were on pretty much back to back here from this match until the start of the pay-per-view. Are you still with me, Wai? Wai might be just in a stunned silence at what had gone on in the AEW Championship match. Okay, we might be losing you, Wai. I'm not sure. But anyway, getting back to the match here, they moved their way down to the ringside area, and here is where Jack Perry delivers a draping DDT to Hook off of the barricade, and then he goes to tease the Van Terminator and has the trash can set up on top of Hook, but then rather than go for the pop, he hops down, and the crowd is furious that they didn't get to see the Van Terminator, and he gives the middle fingers to the crowd, which was a good spot. Perry then uses a Tiger Driver, misses a moonsault after placing a trash can onto Hook, and then it's Hook with a trash can shot to the head, and he starts delivering cross faces, locks on the red rum, and Jack Perry taps out at 8 minutes and 23 seconds. And a very cool part here was Taz, who you could see getting emotional here, watching Jack Perry lose the title to his son in front of all of these fans. And I mentioned this earlier, but I think the Taz strikes such a great balance of, that he's got, he's calling his son's matches, but it never is to the detriment of the match, where that relationship overshadows things. And then, you play it straight, and it's like Hook's his own man, and he doesn't get, when the time is right, that he maybe responds to like a beatdown angle or something like that, but largely just plays it down the middle. And then you have a moment like this where, he kind of gets to step out of broadcaster mode and into father mode, watching his son legitimately having this career accomplishment, wrestling on this gigantic show. And it was a cool little moment here. So Hook is your new FTW champion. And that was the conclusion of the 0 Hour pre-show. We will continue on and move on to the pay-per-view. And our pay-per-view broadcast team at the start was Excalibur, Jim Ross, and Nigel McGuinness. And I thought Nigel McGuinness had a really great show. For those that maybe are not familiar, he, of course, attended the 1992 SummerSlam, and he credits that show as really fostering his dream of becoming a professional wrestler. He was a giant Ultimate Warrior fan, and that kind of really kickstarted his dream to become a pro wrestler, and then uprooting himself, going over to train with Les Thatcher, and then coming up on the independent scene and going, of course, up through Ring of Honor, and always crediting like SummerSlam 92 as a big pivotal moment in his childhood. So at one point later in the show, he notes that that was what really started his dream of becoming a pro wrestler, and hopefully there's someone in this audience that dream is going to begin for them too. And Taz just deadpans and says, I got into pro wrestling because I needed a job. It was a great comeback line from Taz, and the differing paths for both into professional wrestling. So the pay-per-view portion, it kicked off with the aforementioned CM Punk. So, I mean, what an episode of All Access this would have been, from the Jack Perry match with Hook to going into the back, whatever going down here with CM Punk, and then Punk turning around and coming to do a 14-minute match, bleeding a gusher, and retaining his title against Samoa Joe. So this was for the real world championship. And Wai Ting is back, and also back on the show was completely bald-headed CM Punk. What did you think of the Wembley look for Punk?
Did he? I didn't realize there was a change.
I mean, it was just it seemed like a closer cut for CM Punk here. But we're just getting into Punk and Joe here, kicking off the pay-per-view. And they had a really entertaining opener. There were, for fans of theirs, a number of different callback spots for Punk. He was doing a lot of Terry Funk stuff. And this audience, like, they came out, and it was maybe like 60-40 for Joe, maybe even 50-50. But it quickly turned into a very pro Samoa Joe crowd. And dude, Samoa Joe was having the time of his life during this match. And Punk, he did navigate on the fly here, and he pretty much just worked the rest of the match as a heel up until the ending point. But what did you think just about the crowd reaction and the way they went in this?
I have to imagine they, at this point, any Punk appearance, they might be expecting a more negative CM Punk reaction. And I think the reputation that, a British, London crowd has, I feel like they might have expected this. So you had, I think, a pretty effective, decision in having Samoa Joe more so portrayed as the babyface, and Punk really leaning towards being a heel.
So they go to the floor, and Punk avoids one of the Olay kicks when he is seated ringside, but then later would hit it. He did the teeter-totter spot on the middle rope as a tribute to Terry Funk. And then Punk goes for a pescado to the floor, and Joe does the walk-off as Punk just spills there. And then Joe, he starts singing, he starts dancing, and then hits the Olay kick to Punk. Maybe my favorite sequence on the entire show.
Oh, fantastic. Absolutely.
Man created a meme in record time in this match. And then he swings Punk into the desk, and Punk is bleeding profusely here. Our first bit of blood on the show.
Call back to, one of the big spots from the original trilogy against the guardrail.
Yes. And I stand corrected, because we already had blood technically with Hook and Jack Perry, because there was real glass, as you might have guessed. And so not only does Joe swing him into the desk, but then the middle finger, and Punk avoids a muscle buster, lands the head kick. Both are down, and then Punk slams him to the mat. And you think he's going for a 5-knuckle shuffle, and dude, he's in full heel mode, knowing what this audience is going to hate. But instead of the 5-knuckle shuffle, he cups the ears, and we get a Hulk Hogan at Wembley Stadium reference, which, I mean, I think Punk is really on top of the news when that story resurfaced this week with Hogan's latest interview.
What's the story?
So in his book, Hogan talked about working at Wembley Stadium at SummerSlam, and a Make-A-Wish kid that died, and then writing a song with Jimmy Hart about it. And this was always one of those, like, you weren't with the company when they ran Wembley Stadium. And a few years after his book came out, I was on this like phoner with him, and I asked him about it, and he gave me like, oh, it's like I got the year wrong or something like that. It was like, you've never wrestled at Wembley Stadium, like never. You've never wrestled at Wembley Stadium, and it's always. And then so he repeated the story this week, and I mean he did this long interview, and I think part of it, like at this point, there probably is some horrific memory issues, but it's also Hulk Hogan who has just created his own history. And I mean, if he wrote his Wikipedia page, it would be flagged. So anyway, just the fact that we got like a Hulk Hogan spot at Wembley Stadium, like I read CM Punk as a deep cut kind of guy, and I certainly that
he's been doing the leg drop at like in all his matches as well.
I just thought with this week and with Wembley and Hogan, like this was like a lot of people picked up on this and like the Wembley story, but nonetheless, does the leg drop.
You think Hulk Hogan might have been waiting backstage for him after this?
Could have been. You know what? Might have been. Is Hogan going to be maybe Hogan will show up at Chicago next week?
Maybe.
Joe kicks out at 1 from the leg drop. Great use. You know what? I would say great 1 count kick out. But the best of the weekend was Ishii and Luke Jacobs, who tore it down at the Rev Pro show. And those 1 count kickouts were magnificent. Spinning toe hold, another funk spot by CM Punk, and then runs into the STO in the corner. And then fighting on the turnbuckle, CM Punk brings out the Pepsi plunge off the turnbuckle and wins the match in 13:58, and then salutes the crowd. But it was kind of like reverting back to babyface CM Punk for the post match, but for 90% of this match, dude, Punk was just working as a heel, and I thought it fit him really well. And Joe was, I really enjoyed this match. It was one where, like, I figured they'd have a good match, but I also looked at this one as just like it didn't have, to me, the steam that like the last television match had just in the lead up to that. But this was maybe a good placement for it and to kick things off, and definitely was. I enjoyed this more than the TV match they had a few weeks ago.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. I thought the match was really good, and I thought they played with the negative Punk reaction really well by having him, engage in some very fun heel shenanigans. I love the table spot as a callback. I thought Joe looked great as this badass babyface. The Hulk up spot was a lot of fun. And I would say by the end of the match, I certainly felt like they had an extra gear within them, like, maybe a few kickouts, a few GTS teases, but we're reminded that this is only an opening match, and perhaps, what they gave us was maybe some thought was put into conserving the crowd for the later bouts that did have, some of those big near falls. I think the Pepsi plunge makes a lot of sense to use as a finish given their history. I mean, it's a sort of a spectacular looking move anyway to pull it in the stadium setting. And it reestablishes it as, one of CM Punk's finishers. So, I don't think this ends the entire thing because Punk has won the last 2, but if we include only the original 3 trilogy matches in ROH, they're actually 2-2 with 1 draw. So they can set up, build to maybe one final 6th, I guess, of their ROH/AEW trilogy and maybe promote it as a final match.
What if they do a cinematic match and film it at the Fieldhouse in Chicago Ridge and just air it next Sunday? No?
Maybe they should just move All Out to Chicago Ridge.
I don't know about that. Maybe.
All In 2025. Book it.
Okay, the Frontier Fieldhouse.
2 nights.
Who would have thought? I will say, coming out of this show, I mean, I don't know if you have the juice for another Joe match, especially in a week's time, but
Not for Chicago, like for down the road.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, who's coming out of this that is the obvious direction for Punk? I don't feel Ricky Starks is that opponent, even though they've made the suspension lifted in time for next Sunday. Like, I don't know. It's like, quite honestly, I would do. You need something big with Punk, like to the level of who is another big winner on this show, like an Ospreay level.
I sense it'll be Starks, just kind of given the story up until this point. Because if not Starks, then who?
Well, I thought we'd have a clear idea coming out of this pay-per-view. Jay White, Juice Robinson, and Konosuke Takeshita against the Golden Elite of Kenny Omega, Hangman Page, and Kota Ibushi. We've got the Guns in the corner. Don Callis is on commentary. Ibushi and Jay White square off. This was the main event of the second night at Wrestle Kingdom 15 in 2021. and Callis is berating Omega, calling him mentally weak, and he's got his crutch here, Kota Ibushi. They had the heat on Omega for a long period of time, and then Ibushi is in, and Omega and Ibushi do the cross slash.
The golden triangle.
The golden triangle, yes. White is then sent into...
But Ibushi slipped, unfortunately.
They called it out, too, that he slipped. It's they've had their issues sometimes with the timing. It's a tough spot to pull off. And all these years removed. I don't know how many times they've been practicing this.
Probably not so much in recent years, but I mean, I do unfortunately have to say it does maybe, add some more sort of like leverage to the argument that this is not the same Kota Ibushi as we last saw him, in his latest New Japan Pro Wrestling run. So still a bit to, maybe live up to of his past.
They got into some big suplex spots here. White was sent into a German and then a bridging half and half by Ibushi, and they go for the Kamigoye, but Jay White avoids, tries for the Blade Runner. It's stopped, and then Takeshita lands the Blue Thunder Bomb, which Excalibur explains he adopted from El Generico. Omega follows with a Poison Rana, and then Takeshita is hit with the fall away moonsault by Hangman Page off of the top rope. The Guns stop Page from executing the buckshot lariat, so he takes them out with the Orihara moonsault, returns, and White shoves Takeshita away. And as Hangman tries for the buckshot, it's White who ducks it and hits a half and half onto Page. Juice then stops the golden trigger, which triggers Jim Ross to ask, why is everything golden? And he got a history lesson on the Golden Elite.
Like, why is it the Stone Cold Stunner?
Why is it so cold? Why can't he warm up a little?
Yeah.
The Kamigoye then gets countered with a big flying knee from Takeshita. Ibushi shoots in, and Excalibur talks about the lineage of Jumbo Tsuruta and Jun Akiyama. Some great stuff here in context from Excalibur. And the buckshot is delivered. Omega with a pair of B triggers to Juice and White, but it's Takeshita who runs from behind, schoolboys Omega, and hooks the trunks in 20 minutes and 28 seconds. So Takeshita pins Kenny Omega, which I would think is as solid of a match we have coming out of this show that should happen next weekend. And they cut to Hangman, and you see him just mouth, "What the fuck?" And it was a nice cutaway that they caught from Hangman. The expected outcome for me, I thought that this got pretty entertaining, but it was also a very busy match, and they got a lot of time. They went over 20 here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think as you would expect, with this sort of style of match, for one thing, I thought Bullet Club Gold's entrance was really awesome. It was really nice to see Jay White in a stadium setting again, but in a different stadium to the Tokyo Dome, and he looks every bit just. I mean, that was a lot of what I was looking for. How do certain acts look inside a stadium setting? And Jay White is really a stadium level performer. I thought Juice was great in this match as well. It was a very good 6-man. I thought they had some, nice attempted callbacks to, Omega and Page and Omega Ibushi tag team sort of maneuvers. Good match. I would be lying though if I said knowing that Danielson versus Omega was supposed to be on the show, I couldn't help but think just of like whether or not a 6-man like this might have lived up to like, the usual Kenny Omega single standard. And I don't think the answer is yes. This was a very good 6-man, but it was maybe just a notch above like what you would typically see on a Dynamite. And to me, like Kenny Omega is just such a once in a lifetime performer, and you only get these sort of crowds. Well, I was going to say once in a lifetime, but clearly they're going back next year. So maybe that, it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, this was a good 6-man tag in the middle of this show.
Yeah. And I think you're going to get the big singles match next weekend. I mean, that's, not everybody is going to get the big match on this show.
I guess you would just expect Kenny Omega to be one of those.
Anyway,
that's an old argument that we could shelve after this.
So this is from Neil Flanagan. So Tony Khan, at the beginning of the press conference, before he even takes questions, commented on the investigation. Well, let me get into this. So right at the top, he says, quote, "I can't comment on it at this time beyond what I'm about to say. Yes, there was an incident backstage before we went live on tonight's show. We are investigating it. Until I learn more about what happened, I can't really address it at this time, so I can't comment. But I did want to be honest with you and tell you that is the case." So not really adding anything beyond confirming that there was an incident.
Okay.
So that was the way it was addressed. FTR and the Young Bucks for the AEW Tag Team Championship. So among the most over people on this show, where did Freddie Mercury rank?
Maybe right underneath
Because he had to be top 5.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, you associate Wembley, that's probably the most iconic performance to ever take place in the arena. At least I would even, especially like to a world stage. Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, the Bucks come out in the Freddie Mercury attire from like the Magic Tour in 1986, and this gear was so awesome. I thought this was so cool that they came out in. And then FTR, they've got like the Union Jack colors on, and they're wearing armbands for Brody Lee, Bray Wyatt, and for Jay Briscoe as well. And yeah, this was, I think, kind of what we expected, in that the Bucks were certainly trying to be like heelish at times, but like this audience was just here to watch like who's the best tag team. That was the story of the match.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, they're both technically baby faces. I wouldn't say like there was that much. There was no grudge really that was attempted to be built, other than from that final promo from Matt Jackson this past week. But you know, the story is really the fact that these are two of the best tag teams of all time, and they're trying to complete their trilogy right now. Yeah.
The Bucks got the advantage on Cash, and then Matt is doing the Northern Lights onto Dax, who then would try and reverse and hit Germans, and they go back and forth. We get these standing switches, and then Dax tries to win with an inside cradle. The FTR apply sharpshooters to both men, including Nick on the edge of the apron by Cash, and Nick breaks out of the sharpshooter and sends Cash crashing into the steps on the floor. Then there was an attempt with they tried pretty much like the double like power and glory spot, where there was the superplex, and then both teams sent a man for the splash, with both Cash and Matt landing on knees. Nick is then attacked with a spike pile driver, and the crowd is cheering all of this. Nick then tries for a sunset flip moments later, and Dax sits down, hooking the legs, the Brett Bulldog spot, and it only led to a 2 count, which I thought that was like the near fall for some match to use as this really big moment. And it was here, but I wouldn't say it was like a big focus of the match or anything. It was just, it was a 2 count.
Agreed.
Then we get the super kicks to Dax, and they hit their own spike pile driver onto him. The BTE trigger misses as the Bucks crash knees, and Cash spears Nick through the ropes, and Cash is tagged in, and they try for the FTR trigger, including kissing Matt on the cheek. And then the shatter machine is hit for a huge near fall. Crowd is going wild at this point. Dax comes back. He super kicks Matt, and Cash, this being the callback to their previous matches, and Cash goes for a springboard 450, missing Matt, and then Matt super kicking Cash. They think it's over. The BTE trigger is hit, but Dax makes the save, which I thought Nick got the assist here and trying to like get the arm up, because I think he was concerned like Dax isn't going to make it and we cannot blow this near fall here. So a bit of an assist there. Dax then takes his own shatter machine, and there's a second BTE trigger onto Cash for another massive near fall that everyone bid on. They try for the Meltzer driver. It's cut off, and then they hit Matt with a final shatter machine, and Matt is the one that takes the fall. 21 minutes and 45 seconds as FTR win, and then they offer their hands, which the Young Bucks turn down.
Really good match, I thought.
This was tremendous. I thought earlier than I expected it on the show.
I felt like they were pacing it pretty well, and then I thought they really ramped things up once they got into the finishers and the false finishes in the last 6 minutes or so. The crowd, I thought, was really like almost like at their kind of potential peak towards some of those moments, and I thought this was a very satisfying close to the trilogy.
Yeah, and I don't the way they did the handshake, like they do keep it open-ended. And I think this is a program that like you don't have to rush back to it. It's always going to be there. These are going to be the two franchise tag teams. And when the time is right, you can go to this. And I think that's a lot of Tony Khan's booking style, that sometimes people look at it as, oh, they dropped something. And a lot of the times it's parked, and it's always something that they can draw from later. And I think that's going to be the case with these teams, where maybe it's a year from now, you go back to this match, or when it's convenient. I don't think this is one where you're going to see an immediate playoff of this.
maybe even a potential 6-man trios tag with their respective trios at some point.
Oh, who do you see them finding as partners?
Yeah, Jeff Jarrett and Grado.
Maybe next year, Joey Mercury performs at Wembley with the Bucks.
Just bring him back, just
because of his name.
Does he sing?
He booked off your name. Stadium Stampede followed that with Moxley, Claudio, Yuta, Mike Santana, and Just Ortiz taking on Orange Cassidy, Eddie Kingston, the Best Friends, and Penta. And this was kind of the most interested I was in terms of how are they going to present this as a Stadium Stampede match. And as most assumed, like this was much more of a anarchy in the arena, no produced bits. They went out into the stadium, but never to the detriment of like losing the audience. And you had the screens above the ring, so fans could make out what was happening. But really, other than going into the parking lot, there was really nothing backstage and nothing that you would equate with the Stadium Stampedes of the past.
I'm more of the mindset that like Stadium Stampede was really just sort of like a temporary like solution because of the pandemic and because of empty arena crowds, and especially with somebody like a John Moxley who seems to just very much probably shy away from the idea of doing anything like pre-produced. I expected this to be basically a bigger version of Anarchy in the Arena.
Well, this was. Shivani tags in for Jim Ross on commentary for this one. And so Eddie Kingston storms the ring. He's in his Patrick Ewing jersey and goes right after Claudio. And they head to the back and they would end up in like the upper bowl of the stadium. And I thought that they would just do something insane. They went all the way up there and then all the way down. So they got their steps in on the stage. I hope they had like their Fitbit planted somewhere. You would hate to do all this walking around such a big stadium and not get credit for it. Everyone is just brawling. There is blood, there are weapons, and it is anarchy in the stadium. And it's never too early for Moxley to bleed. It's also never too early to pull out skewers, which Moxley does. And he goes to deliver them to Penta, but Penta ends up shoving these skewers into Moxley and then hits a Made in Japan, and Moxley is just busted totally open.
So usually when I see the skewer spot, I mean, you do the thing where you pound the whole like stack of skewers onto somebody's head, and then you let go, and then they just kind of splay out like this. I guess the elastic was kept onto these skewers, so what you had instead was just like basically a log stuck into John Moxley's head as it flipped over and basically lifted that skin right up there, almost like a tree sort of like toppling down. It was disgusting.
Yeah. Renee Paquette's Twitter was entertaining during this match, only for me trying to guess what was the spot that led to her posting her post when she did, because there were multiple candidates, I'm sure. So Wai, I might need some help because it was very hard to keep track of this, looking up and down as I was taking notes. But we just cut to the floor. Trent is eating these shots and he's bleeding like a ton, like just casually, just donating blood to the Red Cross. Moxley then gets a fork and drives it into Orange Cassidy's head and then hits a paradigm shift onto a chair.
So before all this, I mean, did you talk about the Penta spot?
We're not there yet.
I'm sorry.
The transformation. Yes, we will get there.
No. Like what took him out in general?
Oh, what was it that actually took him out? The
Destroyer? So it was like a pile driver from Santana to Penta. He delivers it onto a chair. And then all of a sudden you just hear, and this is in picture. So you see a very small, wide shot, and you hear, need help. It was very concerning. And Santana is just like arguing. He's pissed off. It was incredibly scary. So it was all very well done.
He did a great job because his music went off moments later. And not only did Penta L0M get into the country, but so did Penta Oscuro. Got all his paperwork done in time, and he comes out with Alex Abrahantes. So he did a quick wardrobe change, and presuming these are the same individual.
You know what?
Have you ever seen them together?
I don't know. I have not. But maybe. I thought it was Some would argue maybe a little like so well done that it might even be distasteful. But like I mean, they got me. I thought he was like it could have been a legitimate injury and came out here. I mean, I would classify this as maybe the closest you would get to like a cinematic element to the show. Of this sort of backstage transformation.
Yeah, they didn't go into the what was it? The lake of reincarnation. Is that what it was called?
They might have had a kiddie pool of reincarnation in the back.
Sue returned with a new van, and she had baked cookies for everyone to use as weapons with the cookie sheets. And Moxley came up and kissed her.
Oh, might need to get tested.
Santana and Ortiz, they get nailed with these cookie sheets, and then there's an X-Plex onto the barbed wire board. This is as they're going 3-on-1 on Trent back in the ring. They do a group hug with Yuta before they beat the hell out of Yuta. And then Claudio hits the longest giant swing onto Orange Cassidy. He just kept going and going. We cut to the floor. There's Lego all over the floor, and Taylor gets dropped into them. Then Orange Cassidy goes the Taipei deathmatch route as he wraps up his hand with this stickiness on with duct tape, and then sticks glass to it and has that as a weapon in his back pocket. But before he can hit it, he hits a satellite DDT to Moxley on top of the glass, and then Claudio sends him up into the rafters, and he comes down into a European uppercut. I mean, he just got incredible height here. Kingston returns with a barbed wire chair, just storming down the ring. Not quite gasoline level Eddie Kingston, but it's certainly trying to approximate that image here. Mm-hmm. And he just goes after Claudio, and Moxley grabs the chair. The two of them are face to face, and Kingston starts delivering hurricanes to both Claudio and Moxley, and then spears Moxley through a table, and Orange Cassidy hits the orange punch with the glass to Castagnoli for the pin. This is after earlier hitting multiple orange punches, and this ties into the whole story that his hand has been damaged, and they hit that over the head on Rampage on Friday, that the punch is not working anymore because of his hand, and thus he had this as the substitute glass. So if you ever have a hand injury, always remember this is an alternative measure. And he pins Claudio in 21 minutes and 21 seconds. And while we didn't get Eddie Kingston with like a thing of gasoline, we did get the visual of Eddie Kingston bloodied with Moxley in the corner with the broken table, and he's just putting his middle finger up into Moxley's face behind him, and that was a pretty great visual for the Eddie Kingston collection. I thought this was awesome. I thought this with utter chaos. They had so much craziness. Super busy. This was note taker's dreaded nightmare, but I thought this worked really, really effectively.
I had a very similar feeling to this coming off of like Anarchy in the Arena, and it's that I thought this match was very satisfyingly unsatisfying. It so often in wrestling I think we just look for like finesse and like how well did something go according to the plan of these artists' minds. And I'm willing to bet that half of the stuff that these guys devised probably wasn't even captured on camera. Like Trent and Yuta ended up fighting in the parking lot for probably like 10 minutes, and we didn't even see any of it. We only saw that little like barricade spot.
If they had really been pinching pennies on this, they really could have like filmed their stuff and just sent the tape and just cut it into the broadcast.
Oh, you mean like with Phoenix? Like they could have highlighted.
They actually could have utilized Phoenix in a way in this match, and he was just in the parking lot the whole time. Like that's where it starts with him and whoever.
But I think this is the one match where you can get away with like having everything be pretty bowling shoe ugly. Although
they took Jim Ross off the broadcast for this one.
A ton of violence and a ton of unpredictability is, I think, what these matches are known for. And it gave you that feeling throughout the entire thing where you didn't really know what was going to happen, who might have, legitimately gotten hurt. But I also felt like they managed to really successfully carry through a lot of the storyline connections between the participants throughout, between the best friends and Yuta, Eddie, Claudio, and Mox, of course. And, I thought it was a very satisfying Anarchy in the Arena type of match.
Mm-hmm. And so Orange Cassidy is defending the international title on Wednesday, but they haven't stated against whom. And I thought maybe they would. I mean, you could certainly go with him and Moxley on Wednesday or Sunday. But it wasn't made perfectly obvious beyond Moxley has been the guy they appear to have been grooming for weeks at this point. And Eddie and Claudio seems like a very easy match. You could also, I mean, they were going to do it in July on the Ring of Honor show. That would be an easy choice for Sunday as well.
Agreed with both those. Yeah.
As we continue to play Guess the Card that's coming up on Sunday. Hikaru Shida, Dr. Britt Baker, Saraya, and Toni Storm for the AEW Women's Championship. The first entrance, we hear Queen playing throughout the entire Wembley Stadium, and out comes Amy Sakura. No.
I'm sure she was watching all this and just like,
fuck this.
I mean, I don't know if it was ever going to happen, you know, like Amy Sakura getting
Amy Sakura coming out to Queen on this show. No,
I mean her getting a role on this show, period.
Oh, okay.
But, you know, she was certainly campaigning for it online. I believe they did a Choco Pro in the UK. That might have been, you know, her big sort of all-in moment. But she was the one run. I mean, she had kind of dropped the Freddy gimmick, right, for a long, long time. So I guess Saraya, fair to pick it up.
Saraya comes out and she is accompanied by her entire family, and she's got the Union Jack attire on. And I do think it is worth mentioning because I did see like there were certain people like UK based that, you know, during speaking out, there were allegations against the Knight family. And of course, they had operated at school, some of the students there. And believe me, I really do understand the frustration, especially of people that are there in the UK, which was kind of ground zero for the movement. And here we are all these years later, and it seems to be a subject that people very delicately either dance around or outright just choose to ignore. I understand people not really wanting to revisit what was a horrendous period that shouldn't be confined to just a period that came and went. That's not how it should be treated. And I do get that frustration that sometimes people just want to forget about all this stuff. And I think it is worth bringing up at times, and you don't have to be accused of being like a downer to call these things out that some feel have not been properly addressed. And that the most important thing is that period that it is learned from, and that goes across all companies and all like, that period should not be something that is just forgotten about or ignored.
Agreed. Yeah.
But on that note, we then had Toni Storm come out, and they have redone her whole entrance here. So she is like fully like film noir star Toni Storm, who's slowly losing her mind, or maybe rapidly losing it. I love this character. I was rooting for her to lose because that's the last thing she needs is success. To just continue this.
Calm.
Yeah. I thought all these entrances, like, dude, like Britt Baker came out. She felt like a superstar. The match began. The crowd's chanting Shida. Like everyone felt like a star in this match.
They all had pretty unique entrances. If they didn't have a unique, you know, entrance song, I mean, they had major stadium level pyro, you know, for Hikaru Shida, you know, that like made them all feel larger than life. So I would say like the presentation of this, even before the bell rung, greatly heightened my interest in it, especially coming off of Stadium Stampede.
Yeah, maybe at the end of the show, we'll also talk about just like the production of this show as well, because I thought it was like really high level. So we start things off. The Saraya's family are in the front row, and they get involved with a spot later. Saraya and Storm agree to work together, and then they're going for the double pin, and they argue over who is going to pin Baker. So she then grabs both by the hair and rams their heads, and the crowd is all getting behind Shida. And then Saraya's mother is holding Britt Baker, and Storm misses and drills Sweet Saraya, and Saraya in the ring is pissed.
Saraya Senior, Saraya Junior.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough with this differentiation. So they come to blows in the ring, and they're going at it with forearms and chops. So you're seeing the outcasts fall apart here. So Toni Storm takes off the bottom turnbuckle and is setting up Saraya for the hip attack when Ruby Soho runs down to remind her. She came all the way to England to remind her about her neck. If you're going to turn on her, at least like go for the knee or something like that. Don't break her neck. And Saraya is able to get up and super kicks Toni Storm as Ruby leaves. And Baker then super kicks Storm. We see Saraya applying, I don't know if this has a new name. It was always the Page tap out, but I don't think it's been rebranded. So maybe it's the STO. Okay. And this was a great
that
spot,
one's already
though.
Taken, actually.
I know. So maybe she'll get clever with it. But anyway, she's got Toni Storm in the PTO, and then Baker hits her with a curb stomp, and it looked really great. This
awesome spot
setup for the curb stomp.
Great, yeah.
Shida then lifts up Saraya, and dude, she just dropped her off of her shoulders, and Saraya just like dumped to the floor, to the mat here. There's a Meteora. Baker stops a cover, and she's trying for the lockjaw. Now, they played some attention to this. Dude, Shida's defense for this, she's putting her chin up and grinding her teeth so that she couldn't get the grip. This was amazing. I thought this was so cool, the defense for the lockjaw. And she's able to cradle Baker to try and break free. Saraya then spray paints Toni Storm in the eyes and hits the nightcap onto Toni as Baker has the lockjaw applied, and thus her arms are tied, and Saraya is able to get the pinfall in 8 minutes and 43 seconds. They did not have as much time, but I did not think that was a detriment to this match. I thought it was enough time to get the story across, and Saraya is in tears and brings her family into the ring for the big celebration. And the announcers do note that Mercedes is in attendance, but there wasn't that cutaway or any like overt tease of
maybe no pause in action, to allow it. I could understand that as well, or maybe it just kind of slipped their mind. She broke the curse of losing matches in front of your family.
When I saw that family at ringside, it's like, she's not only not winning this title, she's taking the pin.
Yes. I thought this was a really good match. I can't disagree with the choice of Saraya. It was a wonderful moment tonight.
If you were ever going to do this, this was the time to do it. And it maybe is not going to be a long title reign. And you can certainly question like Saraya in this kind of a role. But,
if
you're going to do it, this is the time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had criticisms, as I'm sure a lot of people did, about whether or not Saraya at this stage of her career with her injuries could live up to, a standard of a Jamie Hayter as a champion or Hikaru Shida as champion. But I think there's more than enough you could do with her to justify a run. She looked good tonight, and I think the personality has been really strong. The Outcasts have made a major bounce back from, I think, a pretty rough for several months of their existence, where I think their identity was really still trying to be found. I mean, it looks like the group might actually be disbanded by this point. But
that's what I was going to say, is like, it looks like the group is...
But they're all coming out of it elevated, and that goes certainly for Toni Storm. It goes for Saraya. It certainly goes for Ruby Riott, who I think that they've all, through this, trials and tribulations of like working together, have really found their individual identities. I thought they did a great job of building dissent between Saraya and Storm throughout the match. Great creativity with the use of her mother to further it as well. Great use of Soho as well. I thought the attack afterwards was like really well earned. So good choice. Like you said, John, if you're ever going to go with Saraya to win the championship, it would have been tonight.
I'm going to fully admit this is way too ridiculous, and it probably would not be everyone's cup of tea. But when this match ended, one of my ideas was, what if on Dynamite, Toni Storm announces a big segment and she comes out with her own title, and she's so delusional she thinks she won the title in this match. No,
and then we could have a real world champion.
It's like she is going into this descent into madness, that she is not attached to reality. And then Saraya, it's not like they're still in the group, but like none of this has computed with Toni Storm.
Are you suggesting CM Punk
more titles? That's what I'm suggesting. More titles.
Are you suggesting CM Punk is currently working this gimmick on the men's side of things?
Oh, that he's lost touch with reality?
Yes.
That could be your backdrop. Maybe that's where you go.
Interesting.
Swerve Strickland and Christian Cage against 64-year-old Sting and not 64-year-old Darby Allin in the coffin match. And we wondered how this one would go. It was one person into a coffin and you win.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to do a double coffin match in a...
Yeah, I mean, it probably would take too long.
Okay. So Swerve comes out, and there's a live performance of his theme on his way to the ring. And
from Flash Garman to DJ Who Kid.
Yeah. Oh,
G-Unit.
Right. Yeah. Well, he comes out and then yells, "Whose house?" Right after Saraya yelled that it was her house. So we have a battle for the house.
Battle of the houses. Well, yeah.
Cage comes out.
Neighborhood. Hey, Swerve was wearing Jimmy Rave's robe, which I thought was awesome.
Nigel pointed this out. Yeah, that was very cool.
Mm-hmm. So great. Yeah.
And Luchasaurus is out with Christian, and then Sting and Darby, they're in this video together, and Sting's like in the old like British top hat and has the like red, white, and blue face paint. And then we go into Metallica.
Awesome.
Then Sting, to mark the occasion, they got thumbtack jackets together, which Cole and MJF did not think of. Matching thumbtack jackets.
Yeah, they might be really, trendy right now in Camden.
So you're telling me that Phoenix and AR Fox couldn't get into this country, but they could get their thumbtack jackets into this country? You think? Or I imagine got in early and made these.
I imagine you can bring a jacket and you can bring thumbtacks separately. Whether or not you can bring a thumbtack jacket, I'm not so sure.
I don't know. Cage saves Swerve by kicking the coffin lid shut when Sting lifts him. A concerto misses on Darby. And then we see Sting take off. It was actually a handicap match because it was Darby and Sting against Swerve, Christian, and this table. And Sting, I think Sting should do his retirement match next year at Wembley against this table. Okay. A British table, as they're very reinforced, these British tables, as we learned. And he tries to put Swerve through this table when he leaps off the apron and it doesn't break. And my God, did this look like, oh my God, this guy broke his ribs in Wembley. But dude just gets up like any other individual his age, says, okay, I'm going to leg drop my way through this. And he puts Swerve through the table, and Excalibur says that Sting is letting the world know that he is the table.
Very nice. Lovely save of this, I guess malfunctioning British table, I suppose. And he actually turned it into an even bigger highlight of the match.
Then Luchasaurus goes to get the skateboard, and Nick Wayne runs down to stop him, and Luchasaurus chokeslams Nick Wayne and carries Nick Wayne to the back. And they're like, what evil things is Luchasaurus going to do? So maybe we will find out on Wednesday what happened to poor Nick Wayne. Darby goes for a coffin drop from the turnbuckle, misses on the floor, landing on the coffin, which was called the coffin flop.
Oh, man.
Dude, I don't know what to imagine. This guy. Can I just tell you this story? Okay. This is like, listen, look at me. Okay. I am hardly an athlete. Okay. But when I got rear-ended, okay, back in June, dude, 2 months later, like my back is really messed up. I'm in a lot of pain. I cannot fathom this dude walking around just gingerly at the age of 40. There is no part of me that would want to pay this toll that is undoubtedly coming this guy's way. And I just watched this, and maybe he's just made of something that is not known to most individuals.
At this rate, like, I think Darby might retire before Sting.
I would hope so. This was just insane, and this was just like the midpoint of the match. Like, it wasn't even the big climactic taking out of Darby from the match. It was just, well, it's a real coffin. It really hurts. So Darby's out on the floor, and Sting fights both. He hits a Scorpion Deathlock onto Christian. It's broken up by a chair shot that Sting no-sells and drills Swerve in the head with the chair. And then Christian hits him in the balls with a bat, and they set up a Swerve stomp. Sting is placed in the coffin, but he doesn't allow the coffin door to close, using the bat to keep it open. And they hit the Swerve kick, and Sting is then placed on top of the coffin as Christian is choking Darby, and Swerve misses a 450 splash, landing on the coffin. Darby rakes the eyes of Christian. There's a belt shot to Christian, and then a Scorpion Death Drop to Swerve on the coffin. They shut it close, but Swerve's got his hand over the ledge of the coffin, so they're kicking down on his fingers and his arm. And finally, Darby climbs up and says, "This'll do the trick." And he hits a coffin drop onto the lid. No human being to cushion the fall. Just, you can't pack your luggage. So you climb up to the balcony and you just do this onto your luggage to close it at the end. And this shuts the door at 15:49 as Sting and Darby win. If that's what you can call what Darby Allin did in this match, if this was a win, nuts.
Oh, I thought this match was awesome. If Stadium Stampede was complete chaos, I felt like this was, your sort of like plunder match where everything was intricately
I thought you were going to
planned.
call this a palate cleanser, which I would not use that as a
No.
description for this.
I thought this was a spectacle, like plunder match where everything was intricately planned but perfectly executed. I thought everything that they were attempting here was pretty ambitious, and I would say for the most part, everything went off pretty perfectly, save for the table spot, which actually ended up being even a better spot, you know, afterwards with the way Sting was able to save it. The amount of risk from Darby is always, 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 always concerning. But if you're going to do some stupid shit, I can look away if it's 80,000 people, you know, on probably the
yeah. But I was watching this guy do
wrestle.
this in Evolve in front of like 200 people as well. So I mean,
So-
I don't think this is a guy who's saying, you know what, tonight's the night I dial it up.
You're right. Yes, I guess I just maybe I wouldn't fault him as much, you know, if I was maybe his mother. I thought Christian was fantastic. I think he ended up being a really good substitute for Fox on short notice. Did a tremendous job of playing heel to oppose Darby and of course build up to the Luchasaurus match. But you know, the guy who I think continues to grab my attention the most is Swerve. His incredible athleticism, his ability to, I think, take care of Sting throughout this match, and his ability to just kind of draw your attention to him as a lead villain. He is another person who I thought looked very stadium worthy tonight. So a really good coffin match.
Yeah, it's one of those questions coming out of this of how you transform the Mogul Embassy coming out of this, minus AR Fox. I mean, you can certainly do that feud. And we should mention on Collision, it's not as though like AR Fox is positioned in a way where he's part of this story. I just thought he fits so well into that group as a heel, and I'm not as high on him in the babyface role, but they are explaining there's still the tension with Nick Wayne. So it's not as though Nick Wayne is just forgiven and forgotten.
It just feels like they really fast forwarded, you know, through several months of story just to kind of get us to what was supposed to come after the fact. I don't think there's any chance that this would be no pun intended, a swerve, and that he'd go back at this point, because I think that'd just be too groan inducing.
Fozzy performs Judas, and Jericho was in his glory here, singing on the way to the ring, accompanied by Sammy Guevara. And then Will Ospreay came out, and this was an awesome entrance by Ospreay. Huge pyro going off. Will's in the Union Jack colors, and this had such a big match feel attached to it. And they hit it out of the park this week with the contract signing and the Rev Pro angle, which they did show here, where after Ospreay beat Shingo Takagi, Jericho showed up in a Bushi mask and attacked Ospreay. And it was like the whole crowd, it took them about 10 seconds to realize who it was. And man, did Jericho just wait, and then did the reveal, giant pop. But for all the talk of them going in and we're not going to have a babyface or a heel. Like, it was very clear they wanted a babyface heel dynamic here with Jericho as the heel.
Yeah, no matter what.
Which made it tough when you have Don Callis in the role in Ospreay's corner. And he was very subdued in this role too. Like, he did not get involved. He wasn't on commentary to kind of cloud the issue. He was sort of just there by proxy.
He was there to, I think, carry like the story throughout like the weeks beyond All In. But for tonight, there was no other decision than to book, you know, the match the way they did.
So immediately, Ospreay's hitting a sky twister press to the floor, and Jericho hits this released German to Ospreay on the apron, which was the Taz opportunity to talk about how bad it is for your neck. And Jericho's giving middle fingers to the audience, but man, Ospreay's done like a ton of crazy stuff. But this German, I just watched it. I was like, oh my God. Jericho then hits a top rope Frankensteiner. He's slapping Will around, and then lands on the knees with the lion salt, and Ospreay recovers and hits a shooting star press to Jericho, who's draped on the top. Crowd is into all of this stuff. Very cool counter as Ospreay goes for the Os Cutter, and he meets a code breaker in midair to the back and then hits the regular version. Ospreay gets up and then he hits the Os Cutter. Jericho kicks out, and there's a Stormbreaker that Jericho counters with a snap Hurricane Rana before applying the walls of Jericho. And Guevara uses the bat behind Aubrey Edwards' back to nail Ospreay, but he's not, or he gets out of the hold. Jericho then grabs Aubrey, and it leads to a low blow to Will. The crowd is booing all of this, and Jericho builds up to a Judas effect for a huge near fall. Everyone's behind Will, and he hits an elbow and a Stormbreaker. Jericho kicks out again. He calls for the hidden blade, and Jericho can see it coming, gives him the middle finger, and Will just nails him with it to the face and hits a Stormbreaker in 14 minutes, 55 seconds as Ospreay wins. And they kind of painted it as Jericho at this like low. He doesn't want Guevara's help. He just leaves Guevara in the ring. And it's sort of this idea like that we talked about this week. Like Jericho he's lost all his friends. He's devastated with this loss, and he's at this crossroads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you think this is the end of the Callis interaction?
I don't know where you go with this after. I mean, it's like you don't have like of the Callis guides. It's like you've lost to Ospreay. Takeshita's with Omega. I don't know. It almost feels like Jericho is either in need of like a hard reset or disappears for a while or something. Like it just feels as though like there's not, other than this lingering Guevara thing, which could just be like he's just isolated himself from everyone, that you don't necessarily need a match to come out of this.
I thought you would get a Sammy turn tonight. It just seemed like, with the two of them positioned in the ring, they were kind of almost teasing it. But I also think like the Callis, I don't think this solves the Callis, feud with Jericho. So I'm curious to see like where they go from here. Is there a possible Jericho Omega team up, just to be able to take on Callis and Associates at some point? I thought this was a very good match, and
I thought, and man, 15 minutes, like they certainly didn't overstay. And yeah, I thought this worked really well. And this was, it was a match that you were very hampered by the fact that Ospreay was in the G1 for 90% of the lead up to this. But I think most people are going to remember a real great go home segment. And I thought they did great here.
Yeah, and just being able to see like Will Ospreay on like really the best wrestler in the world right now on the biggest stage in the world, in a singles match capacity, I thought it was really wonderful that he was able to be on the show despite not being an AEW wrestler.
Like in theory, you built two giant like home country stars in Ospreay and Saraya with the booking of how they position them, like to when you come back, like these are these performances that are going to be remembered for years.
Now, Saraya is understandable because she's under contract. What are you taking a risk by putting Will Ospreay up to this level and then possibly him not being a part of whatever you're doing come January?
I mean, it's not as though you don't have a working relationship with the alternative. But
if he goes to the WWE.
Well, you're certainly risking that. And you have put him now, like you have put his profile at a huge level. And I don't care how many times a guy will say, I'm never moving to the US. It's listen, you can do a lot more than just send your stepson through college with the level of money that could be thrown his way.
I feel very confident that it would be one of the two come January. But, all that said, there are times when you are booking a show like this and you have somebody who happens to be the best wrestler in the world available in a show of his home country. You don't care about the future and you just book for today. And I'm really glad.
Look at Edge last week. Like, you could argue like the Toronto booking, like was that, if you're just looking at it strategically, they went for the big feel good moment in Toronto and they drew a huge number for it, attendance wise. And there's the chance like he won't come back and there's a chance he could leave.
Totally. Absolutely. But, like ultimately it's like you remember, like you do it for the benefit of the quality of the show. And obviously a Will Ospreay match will greatly benefit the quality of the show. Jericho, I think, continues the show at 52 that he's still very capable of hanging at this pace. So despite maybe negative, criticism about the match announcement, they did a great job in the lead up to it in the go home segment. And I thought delivered a very satisfying, very good singles match on a pay-per-view.
Nigel McGuinness is the one who gets to announce the paid attendance figure of 81,035, and they worded it as paid attendance. So that is the number that AEW is putting out as the paid attendance figure.
Yes, and the specification is important because
if you're comparing it in WWE, it was like they do not give out the paid attendance. They don't even give the like distributed number.
Yeah. So this number specifically is not about how many people are in every single box. It's not about how many comps. This is how many people paid money to purchase a ticket.
That's what they are stating, which
Okay.
no other
which would
place
be a
would do
record.
this. Like this is like they could have announced like if you take this at face value, this is the legit paid number.
Mhm.
The number that they could have said and is bigger. Like if you're just going with legitimate, like actual bodies in, and I'm not talking about wrestlers and caterers and everything, just fans that are in the building. They could have announced a bigger number technically, but they made a point to announce what is the paid attendance. And
So
we will
because
see the Polestar data. I mean, AEW is not a public company, so we're not going to see like their key performance indicators.
so Polestar data will basically
Polestar is like audited numbers. Yes.
got
that
it. So
should have,
they will prove this number.
they should, yes.
Okay, interesting. And this would, if this number is accurate, would make it above WrestleMania 32, which held the prior record.
So, I mean, you can look at the exact range. We don't know the exact paid number for WrestleMania 32. The turnstile figure, like turnstile, is like 80,709, give or take.
Given to us given to Brandon Thurston by the Arlington Police.
Yes, that was the turnstile count. Now, when you go through the key performance indicators, like it could be as low as around 76. It could be as high. I want to say
what
like
are key performance indicators? And like,
well, we get the average attendance, right? And you can break it down and you can figure out like what the exact range is, but it's not like we have the dead set paid number. So it's a range.
Got it.
But I mean, there's a very high probability that this would be, if this is the real number, 8135, very high probability this is the paid record, if legit.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's doesn't seem to be anything to argue against the counter, right? Like, it's not like I ever see WWE coming out and saying, well, actually, at WrestleMania 32, we sold this much. Even for them, I don't really see it happening as much.
Do we get a press release on Monday?
From
maybe WWE just puts out, hey, just by the way, these are our
real numbers,
attendance figures, just because we're just going to put it out there.
No, yeah, I don't know. Maybe next year they'll do All In for 2 nights, and then there you go. You get a record-breaking number that way.
Second from the top, the House of Black, accompanied by Julia Hart, taking on the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn for the AEW Trios Championship. And the pre-show was the best line was Paul White stating that, the House of Black, they've crossed a line where this is not the fun-loving daddy ass showing up. They have brought out badass Billy Gunn, who now, like in wrestling history, like this is the dangerous version.
Oh, this is the
Billy
demon
Gunn.
Version of Billy Gunn. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it was like, you've awoken the beast, the man who used to moon the crowd and was losing kiss my ass matches to The Rock. That guy is showing up. I also, anyway, the beginning here, as I mentioned earlier, Buddy Matthews came out with a lantern that they put down at the entrance. And as the lights were out, you had all the lights on and they referred to them as the Fireflies. And this is where they mentioned Wyndham Rotunda's passing. And the House of Black, tonight they were the House of White because, man, their gear was top notch for this big event. It looked super cool. They were in their masks coming out. An awesome aesthetic that the House of Black have.
Incredible entrance tonight. Yeah.
Max's rap included House of Black being a bigger disgrace than Prince Andrew, shots at Meghan Markle, and then comparing them to the characters in Harry Potter.
Yeah, I guess because you have a redhead, a girl, and
that's enough. Yeah,
another guy.
That's enough. Yeah. Billy Gunn was wearing a badass shirt, not because it looked cool, but it just read badass on it.
That's
bad
how
with
you know.
2 D's, bad to the ass.
That's how you know that's about the extent of the difference. Yeah.
And they have elected for a no holds barred match. Now, I don't think it was the worst call, but I will say this did feel like one too many matches where it was just the all out insane type of match. But it was also we were getting like late in the show, and this probably did help for reasons. Julia Hart gets into the ring and she slaps Billy Gunn, who responds with a suck it. And then Julia Hart responded, I was born after the DX run. Could you explain this reference to me? She missed the entire DX run for Billy Gunn.
That's crazy. Wow.
Just to remind you. And then they drop her and hit the Scissor Me Timber spot onto her. And this is when they cut away to Mercedes Moné. This was the time to show her. And she was got a huge reaction when they showed her here. It's countdown to Mercedes and Julia Hart. It's coming.
Maybe she's joining the Acclaimed.
She really got into the whole scissor party later on. So maybe that's where she's going. King misses Billy Gunn, runs into the guardrail. Somewhere in all this, Brody King got busted open on his forehead hard way. And then, man, the Acclaimed, like they had their special move, like this was a video game, and they just went to the arrival and the mic drop, and that was their key to victory. And they were just going to go over and over until they hit this combo and won things. So they hit a bunch of famousers, and then it's Max hitting one, Bowen's hitting one, and then Billy Gunn hits a third famouser, the real famouser, because this is a badass famouser and not a daddy ass famouser. And Julia Hart yanks out Aubrey Edwards to stop the cover, and they explain this is legal because it's no holds barred. So the next time we see a regular match where someone pulls a referee out, remember they pointed out here that would have been a DQ.
Noted.
Okay. The Black Mass, which is the end, is hit to Billy Gunn, and Billy Gunn. It's 1, 2, and I swear this hand got down. Aubrey Edwards' hand was a goddamn millimeter from the mat, and Billy Gunn got his shoulder up. I want to say this is maybe a top 3 Billy Gunn moment of his entire career. This kick out was incredible.
Really? Wow.
His timing was amazing. It was amazing.
I guess what's 1 and 2?
Give me.
It might be the best.
I'll announce it after All Out next year. Okay, or All In. Dante's Inferno gets stopped, and then the Acclaimed send Black and Matthews out, and it's the arrival, the mic drop onto Brody King, and he kicks out at 1. Not one of the big one count kickouts. And then they hit the famouser onto King, then they hit the arrival, then they hit the mic drop, and all 3 jump on top, and they win in 10 minutes and 3 seconds. Mercedes was showing scissoring, and then the House of Black hand over the belts like respectable ex-champions, and I was fine with the title change. I know you were not as high on it. Yeah, I would have pushed back if they had scissored, and I thought they were all going to scissor. All of them.
If the House of Black,
I seriously thought that's what they were going to do for the comedy spot, but they didn't. They exited, and then Bowens called for the world's biggest scissor party, and they did it, which was the whole purpose of this, to do the big scissor at the end. And Gunn finally comes up big, and they win the trios belts. But that was that. Not one of the big matches on the show. I thought it was really late at this point, but I think the audience loved the scissoring stuff and what comes with an Acclaimed match in such a big setting.
Yeah, they love scissoring. I think they love the rap. I thought the match itself was a little bit odd. I felt it seemed to be progressing well, but in the middle, I really did feel the energy kind of fall off a cliff. And, at this point, we're 4 hours, including the kickoff. I mean, kickoffs, including this from the start of the first
match. What was your favorite kickoff? The first hour?
Maybe, the second quarter of kickoff. 8. Yeah. When RJ City went into the arena, that was my favorite. So perhaps this crowd was kind of tired by this point, waiting for the main event. And I also kind of felt like the work wasn't maybe as tight, So it did lose steam to me heading into the climax. But, they got the crowd back with the scissoring, I suppose.
And then the main event, it is MJF and Adam Cole for the AEW Championship. And say this for this crowd. I thought this crowd, they were up for this whole show. I didn't feel like they were burnt out. They sounded lively. I didn't feel there was like a big dip for any of the matches. I thought it was a pretty great crowd overall for such a lengthy, big stadium show. And let's be honest, I would imagine like 60% of them were probably well served at this Wembley Stadium show.
Good chance, yes.
They start off the match and they're wearing their team shirts together, and it's a stalemate. And MJF starts a sportsmanship chant. I think this guy's in a contest with himself of I can get anything over that I choose, and he's proving it correct. Mm-hmm. But then, as the crowd is chanting sportsmanship, MJF pokes him in the eyes. And throughout all of this, we have MJF, who is, they're both trying to win, but Cole is definitely taking this more he has put the friendship aside. MJF is still, I'm having a match with my best friend and trying to balance.
Though I did like that. I mean, MJF was the instigator. He was the one who broke the rule first, and he did it in a way that had to be playful enough that he didn't look like just a total asshole who was the one turning. He did the eye poke almost as if to say, haha, got you. But Cole, understandably, took it the wrong way.
Yeah, so it was amazing just to hear what the crowd reacted to from the MJF, he can't dive. He can't do it. And the crowd is so disappointed. Then Cole rips off MJF's shirt and the crowd is booing this, that you've ripped off the team shirt. And then there's like the tombstones. Like some of this, it was just such simple, effective utilization of audience anticipation and timing it when to deliver it. And when he finally hit this suicide dive, like this guy absolutely gets the most out of the least. And it's an art to do it. And risky at times to like headlining a show like this and mapping this out where you're going to be doing a lot of just teasing the audience with things and telling this friendship story throughout the 20 minutes or so before they did, well, the false finish. So MJF finally hits a suicide dive and he sells it like he's just hit a, Phoenix splash from the top of the stadium. And we do the fish out of water spots with all of the covers. And then MJF power bombs him on the knee. Cole hits a heat seeker and sends MJF into the ring steps. And then it's MJF beating the count back into the ring. And a Panama Sunrise is attempted, but MJF just collapses, rolls to the floor, and he yanks Cole by the leg, takes him onto the desk, and he's going to go for a tombstone, but MJF can't bring himself to do it. And Nigel's yelling, he's such a coward. And then Cole takes control of MJF, who is conflicted, and Cole, without any hesitation, tombstones MJF onto the desk, which we get the behind the scenes, that there is a steel beam underneath this desk that holds it together. That's what MJF was dropped on.
Mm-hmm.
So the crowd is chanting asshole at Adam Cole for tombstoning him on a British table. And then there's a Canadian destroyer onto MJF. He comes back with a super kick. Both are down. And then they hit a double clothesline and both are positioned on the other. And we get a double pin at 19 minutes. Bryce calls it a draw. And you would think this audience was in full lockstep that this is how the pay-per-view is going to end. They're going to leave us with a draw. And Adam Cole we go right back to the 30-minute draw on TV. He calls for 5 more minutes. And I was thinking, Cole, like, we're not anywhere near the time limit. You can get a lot more than 5 minutes if you asked for it. All you need to ask for is a restart. And MJF is one step ahead because he says, no, we'll continue until there's a winner. Restart the match. And they do. And they went for about another 8.5 minutes. And each is going for roll-ups, grabbing the trunks. And then Cole runs into Bryce Remsburg and he is out. And a chair is brought in. They're throwing it back and forth. They each do the Eddie spots with Cole going down. MJF wraps the chair around his neck. He goes down. And then Cole sets up for a Panama Sunrise to MJF, who pulls Bryce in between. And it's Cole who mistakenly hits Bryce with the Panama Sunrise. Has this ever happened to you?
I mean, we've seen errant, what was it, like vertical suplexes? I mean, I think, sometimes an errant Panama Sunrise is to be expected. You got to watch.
Can you imagine being so in the moment that you couldn't pull up? Like you jump off the turnbuckle, there's a new target that's pulled in front of you, and you have to complete the motion.
I mean, have you tried to deliver a Panama Sunrise?
Once
you're off that turnbuckle, you can't turn it off. Whoever's in the way, sorry.
Yeah, an unfortunate casualty here in Bryce Remsburg. And dude, Ruby Soho had 2 appearances here because Adam Cole's reaction when he hit this Panama Sunrise to Bryce was Ruby 10 plus. MJF takes him out of the ring, but he's conflicted. He doesn't take him out of the ring. He takes the ring out of his trunks and then puts it back in. He's not going to do it. And then Adam, Roderick Strong here in like the biggest main event in front of maybe a paid attendance record. Here is Roderick Strong in the neck brace telling Adam Cole to, cheat. And he kicks MJF in the balls and Cole sees it. What are you doing, Roderick? And Cole hits a Panama Sunrise onto the right target, hits the boom, including leaping over the dead Bryce Remsburg to hit this boom. And he's covering him, and Bryce is just crawling over, the slowest count in history. And MJF kicks out. They're all cheering him. And then Strong sends the belt to Cole. He's about to use the belt, but then Cole can't do it. And he removes his shirt and throws the belt away. Roderick's done with this. He's like, I came all the way to England for this moment. F it. I'm leaving. I'm going home. Cole turns around after watching Roderick leave, and he's caught with an inside cradle. 8.5 minutes of the restart, and Cole can't believe it. His attention was diverted for a momentary second, and he didn't cheat when he had the opportunity. So MJF retains the title, and then MJF is consoling Adam Cole. He says, don't worry, the people still love you. I got lucky. That's all. Hey, we still have these. And he brings him the ROH tag titles, and Cole tosses these away like a total, these belts, they're only Ring of Honor. They're on Honor Club. And he just throws it away. And MJF realizes, he says, you were never my friend. You're just a fake piece of shit that only cared about the AEW title. And he throws the belt at Cole and says, fine, take it. And he turns his back, just do it. And he gives his back, and Roderick is back telling him, do it, do it. And Cole holds the belt, throws it down, and the two hug, and this place goes electric as Roderick is watching this, these two friends in the middle of Wembley Stadium hugging, and he's with the Kingdom, and the confetti comes down, and then we get the announcement of next year's All In the same stadium to end the show. Curious to hear your thoughts on the main event.
Yeah. I thought it was a really curious main event. I think it was a main event that was very heavy in storytelling, obviously. And I understand why, from a business perspective, that you'd want to basically maintain the status quo of this team. You know, coming out of the show, I don't know if there's all that much that changes about their dynamic. You didn't get a turn. You got perhaps, you know, a lot of teases of like Adam Cole basically flirting with turning heel on MJF and then ultimately choosing friendship over it. And I thought all of that was really well done throughout the match. You know, I think they both did a really good job of, you know, telling us, like, conveying what was sort of like the strife within their minds. I thought the restart was really nice, especially like with the double clothesline leading to that double count, double pinfall. However, after the restart, I thought there were too many shenanigans. You know, anytime in one of these sort of Iron Man matches or whatever, where you do get one of those restarts, the heat is intense and the pace picks up and they rush to these wonderful, memorable conclusions and climaxes. Here, to go right from the restart into like that sort of chair tossing anti-Eddie counter type of thing, I thought took away a lot of the intensity of this particular match and that wonderful restart that they crafted. And I think that was always going to be a bit of a challenge for this match, because going into All In, like, you have to ask, was this always the plan? Did they plan on peaking MJF and Cole for this show and then deciding to continue it afterwards, or was it supposed to end here with something more definitive? This is something that's going to carry them now forever. There's no time limit. Like, they can even build this up to next year if they wanted to. But as a result, tonight, I think was a little bit did not feel like a final chapter in the least. It felt maybe like a middle chapter. And for people that bought this show hoping to see like some sort of like big conclusion or maybe even dramatic turn, I don't know if it necessarily hit those notes, but it was, you know, a well executed type of story, you know, overall.
Yeah, number one, I think if this was a true tribute to the first All In, I think the trios match should have gone 26 minutes and they would have had to race through this one in 11. So they did drop the ball in that regard. This is going to come down to, I think, if you've been really invested in this MJF Adam Cole story, you probably love the twists and turns and who's going to turn. Now, the answer at the end was neither. Which is, I don't think you've hit the conclusion of this. Like, there's juice left in this program. It just so happens that the midpoint is your biggest stadium show that everything's been building towards. Mm-hmm. But this was a very heavy story match. It was certainly not my match of the show. Mm-hmm. But I was into it. But yeah, there was a lot of shenanigans in the match, and that's either your cup of tea or it's not. And it's sort of striking that balance. I thought it got a little heavy at different points, but I don't think you can deny that this is a story that a lot of people are into. And how do we prolong this? I would say my strongest negative coming out of this show is just the fact that coming out of it, I do not have a match for MJF in my mind for next Sunday. Like, I don't think a rematch makes sense.
Could be a tag title defense.
I don't think that's the hottest thing either for your champion.
If you have a hot Punk match, but you're right. Like, maybe on All Out.
Realistically, you're right. It's like it's MJF and Cole against like the Kingdom or
Mhm.
Is that your pay-per-view match?
I mean, we don't need to predict, right? Like I do think, yeah, like maybe there should be elements on the show that could lead you to a logical conclusion, but
I
like
didn't need
who
stuff
knows?
announced tonight, but I do feel you needed to know some directions that, like, man, I have to see this pay-per-view next week because there's this
Mhm.
clearly like big match that I'm not gonna skip. And we may not get that announcement till Wednesday unless they preemptively announce something big, but I don't know what they have. So we got to wait till see.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be tough for next Sunday to come back so quickly for people after this big show.
Perhaps, yeah. But I agree with you that this was not my match of the night, and I think maybe should a main event aspire to be the match of the night? And if it doesn't, do you consider it a failure? I wouldn't necessarily say failure. Maybe a slight disappointment is what I would say. I think it was a well executed match, but I think the choice and the style of match that they had, especially after that run towards the end, to me was a little questionable because we know these two are incredible wrestlers, and I think I was just missing some of that incredible wrestling, especially in the run up to the finality of this match.
Now that we saw the buzz in the last couple of days and building up, like this felt like a big show going into it. And when they first announced Wembley, my thought was this is your best opportunity to ever come into shooting distance of that all out 2021 number that is their all-time high point. And
Yeah.
if not, I don't know what's going to be able to eclipse that number. Like this one, I don't know how it's going to finish, but I feel pretty optimistic on this show that it just in those like the final day, like
Yeah.
just being such a hugely important show for the company that people want to see, that it felt like a major event. And I don't know. I don't know what this is going to come in at, but I mean, are you
So well, I'm sure, like maybe John, like, would you agree that if this was a show that took place at 8 p.m. Eastern time, that it would eclipse that record? Do you believe that,
I
based
don't
on
think
the quality of the build and the grandeur of the atmosphere alone?
I wasn't as I'm not as pessimistic about the time being such a detriment to people.
I think for me, it's the biggest X factor and the biggest thing that might mitigate, whatever success this show might have had on its own. Just simply as a professional wrestling show at a regular time.
I do think for the West Coast, it is like that is more of a factor where you're talking like even like the
10
0
a.m.
hour is 9 a.m. And
Mhm.
the pay-per-view's at 10.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's part of the thinking as well, like that Tony Khan mentioned is like this is like the NFL start time on a Sunday, and the idea of building it up to this big event feel. We're gonna see. I
But
mean,
it's about building habits, right? Like, but like as
yeah,
an
it's
F1
tough.
fan, I'm used to waking up in the morning to watch a race. By the way, really crazy race today. But wrestling fans aren't used to, or at least North American wrestling fans aren't used to waking up so early to watch these shows. That said, I mean, we know an AEW audience will follow them anywhere, and if you're dedicated enough to follow along with the storylines and buy a pay-per-view, I think there's a really good chance you would have made the time tonight as well. But how many casual audiences might be there to also take them to that record level?
Do you say over or under, let's say 160,000 buys?
Okay, I'm going to say over. Yeah.
Over?
Mhm.
I'm going to say moderately over. Yeah. I feel
Mhm.
I definitely felt stronger about it after that go home show on Wednesday and just the buzz in the days leading up to it. But
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see.
You have a prediction for All In or All Out, I should say?
If you're asking me today, I might have a different answer after the card is revealed. I feel it's really, really tough. I feel
we don't even know the card. We don't even know the build.
That's a problem.
To be honest.
That's a problem. Like, I don't know how many cold cards you're going to get. And I mean, there's going to be some programs that they have been building. It's just a matter of announcing them. But yeah, I don't feel great a week out for people coming back and spending the same amount.
We have a lot of people that are waiting to call, especially I'm sure some of you guys from the UK who actually went to the show. Before we get there, what were your overall thoughts on the show itself?
I thought it was a great big event feel. I thought the production was top level. It felt like a major league production. And I thought that was such an important part beyond like one match over delivering or a bad match under delivering. I thought it was most important that this felt like a major league top level production from AEW. So in that sense, and I think it was a show that, despite its length, I didn't feel there was a drag on it. Everyone got their allotted amount of time. I never felt there was a match that got shortchanged, including the women's match, which I think was the shortest. And yeah, overall, I thought it was, I definitely give it a thumbs up show. I thought that the top matches would have been Jericho Ospreay. I thought Stadium Stampede was great. And I thought Bucks and FTR would maybe be if I'm shortlisting it.
I might actually go with the coffin match as maybe my favorite match, tonight. Maybe after that, Jericho versus Ospreay as well. But I thought it was a very good show overall, as almost all AEW pay-per-views are. Maybe your level of satisfaction with that would only be determined by what your expectations might have been going into this. For some people, maybe another AEW pay-per-view might not be what they were expecting. Maybe if they were expecting a WrestleMania level, whatever that means, or greatest show of all time. This was not the greatest AEW show of all time. I wouldn't classify it as that, but it was a very good show. And more importantly, like you said, John, the atmosphere and the ability to sort of like have these incredible shots now in their catalog to be able to show potential advertisers was a huge benefit, I would say, overall.
Okay, let's we do have a bunch of feedback too, so let's try and make everything concise, and we will get to as many people as we can.
So if you're in the StreamYard room and if you have that link, I'm going to assume that you will want to talk and call in. So I will be going to you. Let's start first of all to the UK. And we go to Paul from the UK. Are you there, Paul?
Hello, Paul.
Hey, John Way, how's it going? Yeah. Sorry, I've got really poor signal. We're in the car again.
Okay.
Okay.
Are you driving?
No. Yeah, no, Lisa's driving again. Okay. We spoke to you on Money in the Bank.
Okay. Quick thought, Paul, before we lose you. Just quick thoughts on the show.
Excellent show. For me, it was Sting coming out. It was just the best thing ever. I've been to many Manias, went to Royal Rumbles. Sting coming out just killed it. It was fantastic.
Fantastic. Cool. Excellent.
Thank you very much. Coverage. Cheers.
Oh, thank you, Paul.
No problem. Thank you, and hope you enjoyed the show. Much appreciated. Good check in there. Let's go over to James from Liverpool. Hello, James. Let's see if we can get you in there. Oh, sorry, one second. Hello, James. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, James, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, man. It's good to finally speak to you guys. I've been a long time listener, but yeah, I can't really comment on the in-ring performance. I was so high up, I couldn't see anything that was going on, but the atmosphere was amazing, and it was just a good fun night. And it's interesting to hear what you say about the main event, because the main event was just awesome. Like, everyone in the arena, as far as I was concerned, thought it was just the best thing ever. So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to watch it next week and see what it actually was like.
Yeah, I mean, the audience was completely engaged with it. So, I mean, it just seems to me it was like it just depends on your mileage of like what you were looking out of this. Like, it was like, I thought the 30-minute match was a better match, but this had the stage, this had the further developed story. Like, they were going into that pretty cold based off of MJF's promo about this was one of his heroes, and this one you have months of story behind it, and it was a great atmosphere for the match.
Yeah, that was awesome. Everyone thought that Adam Cole was going to win it, but I think everyone kind of turned to the match and just was just all behind MJF. So yeah. But cheers, guys. Thanks for your coverage.
Well, quickly, what were some of the biggest reactions of the night to you?
I don't know. Like CM Punk got like a really bad, and especially when everyone was talking about what happened backstage afterwards. But yeah, nothing came close to MJF. Even in the 5 p.m. like there was loads of people in the arena for that, and everyone went absolutely mad for it. So,
wow, fantastic! Thank you very much for checking in, James.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
All right. One note here from the press conference also that came. Tony Khan says he plans to run All In and All Out a week apart again next year. He says the UK bank holiday weekend and US Labor Day create a unique opportunity, and he wants to create a great tradition. So he's going all guns blazing, and he's going to do this back-to-back pay-per-views again next year.
That is fascinating, especially without having seen perhaps the business metrics of an All Out yet at this point. Bruce Lord,
and also, will it be back-to-back pay-per-views next year? Like, if you have a streaming deal in place by a year from now, like maybe it is different than asking people to spend $50 back-to-back weekends.
Well, if it's Labor Day, how wouldn't it be back-to-back?
No, I'm just saying, like, if you have a streaming deal next year, like one of the shows could stream as part of a deal, and might not be pay-per-views.
Hey, Bruce Lord, what do you think about that?
I mean, if it is happening again next year, I really hope that a bit more time is spent kind of, cooking, simmering, and preparing All Out ahead of time. Looks like we've gotten a couple of matches announced during the press conference. Takeshita Omega has been made official. Cassidy taking on Penta, and then the winner of that facing Moxley at the pay-per-view. But yeah, this felt like, in terms, the very satisfying conclusion to a whole bunch of stories that were very, very rushed over the last few weeks. And I say that as, somebody who listens to podcasts at 2 times speed. And, the actual in-ring, on the whole, I think everything measured up to expectations, and in a couple of cases exceeded it. But there were so many stories here that you just thought would have benefited, I think, from the wonderful visual presentation, just those, incredible shots that, especially as it got darker, and those kind of circling shots of the stage, that the entrances, the music, all of those things would have just felt a little bit more impactful had we had, I don't know, more time with, Jungle Hook as a team before they broke up, or all of these various other stories that seem to be just reaching a very, very quick culmination. But, apart from that, in terms, I think kind of things went kind of as a lot of us expected, which was, okay, we're kind of where we often are with AEW pay-per-views. Bit of a rushed build, but when it comes down to it, I think everything pretty much delivered. I think on paper, I guess Jericho and Ospreay in the tag match might have been the best matches, but I found myself just very entertained by both the Stadium Stampede and the Coffin match, just, really making, I think, the most of just this very grand stage that everything was on.
And I think the big event feel, just especially in an AEW setting, I think that was really captivating throughout the show to watch this promotion do its first major stadium show. And they put out the bells and whistles. You got some elaborate entrances. You made use of the fact that you have 80,000 people, and we're not going to just simply book this like we would an arena show. And I think that had a lot of the charm to the show that put it over the top too.
One other little point to what you guys were talking about just before you went to feedback there. To quote Elton John, rather than Freddie Mercury, like Rocket Man, it was 0 hour 9 a.m. out here on the West Coast. And that was a bit difficult to get up for. I'm not going to lie. I was going to a friend's house a couple of towns over and just getting up at the crack of dawn, eating some hash browns, drinking some coffee, and watching wrestling that early. It felt like a bit of a push, but, even the more kind of like casual friends that I sometimes watch pay-per-views with, they were down for it. It didn't seem like too much of an inconvenience for them. So I don't know if I really see it affecting the pay-per-view buy number that much. Kind of, 160, 165 probably sounds about right to me, but what do I know?
Did you guys make plans for August 25th, 2024 to get together?
Well, maybe think about, I don't know, at least two of the friends that I watch it with are from the UK, and they were a little homesick at times kind of watching some of the references and whatnot. So who knows, we might actually book it off and fly over there for it next year.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Bruce. Always appreciate your feedback, especially from the West Coast perspective.
Take care, guys.
Thank you, Bruce, as always. We got a super chat here coming to us from Paul Dominic DeMarco, who sends a $7 super chat. Thank you so much, Paul Dominic. He says, Wembley next year. So in 6 months, Tony backs the Brinks truck up to Ospreay and has him main event for the title. How does this, announced sort of renewal, maybe even an annual tradition of All In being in London, affect Will Ospreay's chances of going to AEW?
He was treated as the superstar. He was booked as the superstar for this market, and I think you would want him in as big a match as you could a year from now, and somebody as well that could be utilized in such a way that, if he wants to stay based in the UK, does not need to be on television every single week, and it actually creates a higher demand for a Will Ospreay that probably in the long run you'd get a lot more longevity out of, rather than being a weekly character that's doing tons of big matches all the time and they're spread out. But to give a long answer to a short question, I would want him in as big a match as possible for next year if all things are in alignment.
Let's go up next to Carl and Chris, who look like they have had
they're exhausted.
Quite the long day. So
oh my God, he's out.
Dude on
Carl? Chris is out. Can you see?
He's awake.
You just woke him up.
Yeah, you're live.
I don't know where. So Chris was the one that got me into John and Wai many years ago, and he's awake. Look, there he is. He's awake.
Hey.
He's awake.
Sorry to keep you guys waiting, but thank you so much for calling in.
It's been a long
So
day.
we had a great time at All In tonight. I think Ospreay Jericho was the best match, but the strangest thing was not having any commentary. We thought it was our first live wrestling event, and I just wondered how you thought about when you go to a live event and not having the commentary and almost not having the full experience, or feeling like you've had the full experience when you're there.
I mean, it is very different, but I mean, I considered professional wrestling at its purest form, the way it's meant to be seen. You know, I mean, it's a sport designed for a live experience, and if you've been following the story, if you kind of understand, you can really make your own commentary. You're really there just to listen to the crowd. So I'm not usually affected too much by it, unless it's a maybe story heavy type of bloodline like match, which I could understand. But how about you? What was the experience for you like?
Yeah, I think we really enjoyed it, but I do think there was that bit of almost it was a lot of wrestling, and you didn't really feel like there was as much of maybe watching a Dynamite or a Collision that you would expect. But no, we loved it. It was amazing, and the notification of next year, I think sounds amazing for us. We'll be there every year.
Being over there, do you feel like there's a really strong chance that AEW can replicate this level of success a year from now for a second show at Wembley?
Yeah, definitely. I think the buzz that you got when you were there, it was like I think that we all feel like we were. My wife can't quite understand why I would even watch wrestling, and she said to me, who would go to watch these events? And I said, nerds. And there was 81,000 nerds there, and there'll be 81,000 nerds there next year. I am absolutely sure.
Well, there you go. The gospel according to Carl. Well, guys, thanks so much for calling in, and get some rest. And we appreciate the live feedback tonight.
Thanks, John and Wai. Take care.
Thank you, Carl and Chris. One of the things about this is it does now make Wembley a travel destination for international fans.
Listen, it's a big reason in the column of why we go back to a London. Like, you're talking a massive tourist hub. It coincides with a bank holiday. And listen, if you were someone that were maybe on the fence or not interested, you watch this show, I think there's going to be a heavy demand for the following year. Can they do 80,000? Like, that's a really, really high benchmark that they have set. That it's like if they sold like 68,000 tickets, like that will be painted as like some kind of dismal failure, which is insanity. But I mean, that's just how it kind of works, is like you always have to outdo your previous effort. But I can't fault the idea of going back to a London as well. But I think at most you have really solidified All In as the brand of the big show. We now have your equivalent of, not to say in stature of a WrestleMania, but they have their version of a WrestleMania now. It's not this debate about Forbidden Door or All Out. Like, it is clear what is the number one show of the year, and it's this event that they can run a stadium with.
Let's go up next to David McKenzie. Hey, David. Thanks for calling.
Hey, John. Hey, Wai. How are you both?
We're doing well.
Yeah, so interesting. You just talked there about the AEW coming to London again next year. I see it very much like the NFL International Series that's now a staple in London. It draws international fans from Europe, every year, and it looks like that's probably what Tony Khan's going to lean on towards doing this as a similar event next year, maybe for the future as well. But I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts very quickly, because I was quite surprised Jack Perry dropped the title back to Hook at the show, and I kind of really wonder where Jack goes from here. It seems like he sort of was given a title and now he's just back in the wilderness.
Thank you very much, David. It does feel like the nature of this push might have been a little bit rushed, but it also wouldn't surprise me that like he would move on to a bigger feud, maybe for an actual title at this point. We of course don't know the status of like an Orange Cassidy versus presumably John Moxley match at All Out, but I could see Jack Perry transitioning to an Orange Cassidy feud beyond that. What is that actual next step for a heel? There are a lot of other people for him to face. they could have perhaps, gotten a few more weeks out of this Hook deal, but I think they achieved enough. And I have to say, like, especially, well, listen, backstage, whatever, like, notwithstanding, strictly on screen, I think he's done a great job of being a heel, and has really kind of like effectively, like, sold himself as a dislikable person that I no longer just see as Jungle Boy.
Yeah, but everything that happened in the back, like, that is going to cloud everything with him. Like, when AEW says they're investigating this, like, they're like, he might be on ice. Like, we don't know what his status is going to be. I think it's going to be, the outcome is going to be less connected to him versus everything that went on otherwise, unfortunately. But yeah, it was a lot cleaner of an ending than I was expecting, of just a clean drop of the title to the finisher and tapping out in the way he did. So it's a crossroads, but there may be other mitigating factors that are going to affect what his short term is.
I'm assuming you were at the show today, David.
Yeah, it was actually my first live event ever. So made it along to Wembley, came down from although I've got a Scottish accent, I live in the Midlands in England now. So travelled down, staying in this hotel, as you can see in the back of me tonight. So yeah, it was a really good show, fantastic event. Atmosphere was just electric. And the one thing I think a lot of people in the crowd were expecting was maybe some more surprises. Like, I think people were expecting maybe Mercedes Moné to be some way involved in the show more than just the camera panning to her a couple of times. But there was no real expectations beyond what was on the card. I think maybe just when we're talking about for next year, the one thing I think Tony might want to think about is just building that card up way earlier. If you're going to try and get to that 80,000 mark again, I think you get away with it because it's the first time. I think next time round, you're seriously going to have to build up those storylines to just get that fan interaction.
Agreed. Thank you very much, David, for calling in.
Thanks so much, guys. Love what you do.
Thank you, David.
Here. All right. Let's go up next to Spence. Hey, Spence.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
How you doing?
Well,
I'm assuming you did not go to All In, judging by your background.
I did not. I'm in Vancouver. So it's a little bit of a long way. First of all, first time, very long time, like since the Heroes of Wrestling 1.
Oh, wow.
Review.
Wow.
Yeah, so
awesome.
Been a while.
We reviewed that like 5 times, so the first time.
I know.
That's a while.
I listened every time too. Also, like the West Coast thing, it worked out perfectly for me today because obviously the F1 race was like right when it ended is when All In started, so it was perfect. So I got up for the F1 race. My question is, what do you guys think of JR's commentary tonight? I thought he was a little bit grumpy, but I thought he did quite well for coming back and everything. I mean, he's the greatest, but I thought he did pretty good today.
Thank you, Spence, for the call.
Thank you, Spence. Yeah, I thought, he had his lines that were just kind of come with the Jim Ross style that is pointed out. But I think for him, I'm sure this was he's been back on Collision for a couple of weeks, and I'm sure it was, this was a show that he was working towards coming back to try and be on. And I think that when you isolate him to a handful of matches, that's probably like the best utilization.
Nothing honestly stood out too much about Jim Ross to me today. Like nothing bad, not necessarily anything good either. I think like as sort of like a detraction and maybe just like, to pay sort of like to give this guy this legendary status to put on your commentary desk. I'm really happy with the way that like, you got
to pop when the music played. Like that's, for people like David here who just called in, it's his first wrestling event. Like you got to remember, like there are fans here who have probably never seen most of these performers live, like a Sting or even like a Jim Ross that has been a big part of their fandom for decades, probably.
Yeah, I mean, as a third or even sometimes fourth voice on the team, just so that we can maybe check in and get his sort of like presence I think he's perfectly like good and fine for the role. I am curious to know if like they're planning on doing more like sit down interviews with him, like I think we saw a few times, and to see if they would transition him to maybe another role, but for now, like I think Jim Ross should be on a show like this, all right, let's go. We are approaching the 2-hour mark, everybody, so let's if we have a few more calls here. First one, let's go to Muggin. Hey, Muggin.
The saga continues.
The saga continues.
Yeah.
What do you think of All In?
It was very much an enjoyable show. I mean, I went and the main event especially was the man. It really had a flavor for the dramatic, especially during the after that first false finish. And I kept waiting for after the post match to see if something's gonna happen. It turns out the only swerve is that there's no swerve at all, and it looks like their AEW is gonna be rocking with this Friedman Cole story a little bit longer, especially now that they're both tag team champions now. And I don't know where MJF is going to go from here
What would you like to see, Muggan? What would be a match that, whether it's a tag match, whether it's a singles match with MJF, what would really entice you if you were not so sure if you want to order this pay-per-view? What would you like to see?
I mean, they can't keep dancing around, Punk for much longer because they got to do the unification. I mean, how long can you have two world champions, where one of them claims they never lost a championship, and you have a man who has the title in MJF. So I mean, they have to circle back to that at some point. And I also want to make mention, Cole's gear is inspired by Borderlands, which is excellent. It's very much in the vein of Handsome Jack, which is one of the villains in the second game. And going down the rest of the show, I'd like these.
Just one more point, Muggan. We do have a lot of feedback to get to, unfortunately.
Yes. One more thing. Stadium Stampede was very, very good. I mean, I love Penta's mid-match, Cactus Jack, transformation. That was nice. And I gotta say, for Grand Slam and Arthur Ashe, I mean, I would love to see Claudio and Eddie Kingston have their match for the Ring of Honor World title in Queens, and Eddie wins it because I want to see that scene cave in when Kingston wins. All right, guys.
Yeah, there are a lot of shows to build. Final notes here from the press conference. From the press conference is they're also now adding a pay-per-view on October 1st called Wrestle Dream in Seattle, which is going to be a tribute to Antonio Inoki. And also Full Gear is confirmed for Los Angeles on November 18th, as we can move on. All right. We will try and reconnect with Paul is connected with us now. Hello, Paul.
Okay, I'm going to go to one.
Oh, where?
Way is just reconnecting. Don't worry about it. But you are now connected in.
John.
This is a very clean feed.
We're now at home. Yeah.
All right. So what did you think of the show tonight?
Excellent. Really, really enjoyed it. It was fantastic. Like I say, when we were in the car, the Sting's entrance for me was unbelievable. Never having seen Sting live, it's just such an experience. It was fantastic, and I'll never forget it. It was brilliant.
Was that your match of the show, the coffin match, or was something else?
I'd probably agree with you. I really enjoyed the Jericho Ospreay match. I thought that was fantastic. Also, the House of Black entrance was just unbelievable. That was exceptional. No, the whole I mean, didn't really have the best expectations going in, but I kind of find that's very common with AEW, and then the shows just are incredible. So yeah, it was great. I just wanted to again say thank you for all your G1 coverage this year. It was exceptional to everyone. So thank you.
Much appreciated, Paul. Thanks a lot for calling in, and glad you enjoyed the show tonight.
Cool. Thanks, John.
All right. Okay, we're going to go to one more call here before we get to your feedback and the last voice of the night, unless we have any more run-ins. It is Brandon from New Jersey. Brandon, we're on a tight schedule, so what were your thoughts tonight on All In? Did you even watch All In?
I did. Can you hear me?
We can always hear you, yes.
Cool. I'll be real quick. I thought because I don't want to take any of your time. By the way, the Terry Funk obituary was incredible.
Thank you.
Much respect. I'll be real quick. I thought the main event was kind of overcooked. A lot of method acting. I mean, people rag on the bloodline stuff, and they kind of took it there. I'm probably out of pocket and whatnot, but I don't know.
Are you going to go to All In It 2 next year?
Me?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
Not All In. I asked All In It.
If it wasn't for the UPS potential strike, I might have gone.
Do you have any visa issues? Are you?
Nah.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm not bad. I don't have a criminal record, or my passport's all good. But yeah, I thought that was it. I thought Swerve got jobbed, man. His dreadlock was exposed. I mean, you let Sting go with the bat. I mean, come on, right?
Because it was hanging out of the coffin.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Well, this is certainly a point that he can raise. Maybe like Hornswoggle not being eliminated in the 2008 Royal Rumble.
Or what's it called? Get eliminated at the Rumble. What's his name? I forget. And I was bummed that we didn't get Voodoo Kin Mafia Billy Gunn.
Well, there's next year. Did you not hear they announced they're coming back to Wembley next year? Like you have a whole build now for VKM.
Seriously, but they should get. I hope they get a Dynamite and Collision and Rampage, right? I mean, next year, right? Shouldn't they bring the whole thing over? I mean,
I could certainly see. Like, I thought that was an interesting question this year. Like, do you try and do some of your TV over here? Like, you would have incredible crowds, and I think, especially doing Collision the night before at a venue, I would certainly table that for next year. I think it'd be a better idea than just taping Collision. Like, it does add more, but I think they do really healthy with this amount of people in town that you could sell a decent sized venue for a TV taping the night before.
I mean, I feel it's an underserved market. I mean, you look at TNA, and they were beloved in England and whatnot. I mean, yeah, I think they deserve, the royal treatment for no pun intended. You know
Thank you.
And one more thing, all the fireworks. It felt like a Evgeny Paragosin tribute tonight. It was ridiculous, but I could see it was at WrestleMania and whatnot. But great show, guys. Love you guys. Way, hope you're okay with your internet. You look frozen, but much love,
I'm here.
brother. I love you guys.
Stunned at your words, as usual.
Love you. I love you guys. Goodbye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Brandon, as always. Okay. Thanks for all the calls. All of you. I was going to say, especially those that attended live, but that would assume that I don't appreciate the other calls. All of you are appreciated. So we will go into feedback. We might have to condense these here because Wai and I can only talk to each other for so many hours per day. We start off here with Stinga, who says, I attended today's show as a wrestling fan wanting to be a part of and to witness history. I don't watch AEW or really follow the product. I mainly follow WWE through your podcast. Firstly, it was great to be surrounded by 80,000 wrestling fans and having a great night. Nothing better. And having been to multiple 5-hour WWE shows, in contrast to those, this did not drag. It kept me entertained and laughing throughout. And there were some great matches. The main event, coffin match, Ospreay and Jericho, to name a few. But controversial opinion time. In terms of the product itself, I couldn't get past the fact that I found the matches essentially to be a massive spot fest. I know this is a really easy and common indie wrestling criticism, but I felt it today. And goes on to mention some examples here with Christian and Darby, the trios match. Why would I care about any damage being done to a body on this show if there's no consequences, there's no storytelling, and nothing really to get invested in? I would certainly say that there is storytelling that exists. I would say in the Young Bucks FTR match in CM Punk and Samoa Joe, I think there were a lot of callbacks, but that does require you to kind of be up to speed and have that sort of in your recall of, spots in previous matches and building off of other things as well. But yeah, it's a larger opinion than we have time to table here. Okay, we will continue on then with
can you hear me right now?
I can hear you, Wai, but if you want, I can just finish the feedback. So we will go to Sal in California, who writes, I really enjoyed the show from top to bottom. Favorite match was FTR and the Young Bucks. Those four could do no wrong when paired together. I love being able to watch a morning pay-per-view. It's now 2 p.m. in my time zone, and I can enjoy some daylight. Well, Sal, maybe you will at least get one of these next year with an afternoon pay-per-view and probably some from WWE as well. Cav from Glasgow. FTR and Bucks was easily the best match I've ever seen live. He was at the show. It's my first time seeing either team live. They absolutely delivered. We had ramp side seats. Nice. So we got the best view in the house for Stadium Stampede. Loved every second and hope the energy came across on television. It definitely did. The show was perfectly bookended by MJF and Adam Cole. The tag match was okay, but wow, that main event was incredible. While we all suspected a turn, the ending was perfect. Hats off to both of these men. And same time next year. See you gents then. But now I'm off to Harrow to meet the BDE. Well, there you go. Hopefully you're all in one piece by the time you come out of their post-show party. Eric from Cork, who is currently in Wembley. This is great to have all this live feedback from people. Fun show live with a great main event. That is probably the best example of pulling off a match filled with bullshit and why am I so violent moments that I've ever seen forever. Also enjoyed the coffin match, Stadium Stampede, Joe and Punk, and Prince Nana's little dance to the ring. Fozzy were atrocious live, and I didn't think the match that followed was much better for a number of reasons. Okay, Concert, you can have your opinion. I think the match, I think you'd be in the minority on that one, but to each his own. Giving Saraya the women's belt is idiotic and is only going to drag the division down further if they don't take it off her quickly. Okay, well, there. Not a fan of Saraya winning the championship. Cody from Maine, he writes, the match is delivered from the pre-show to the main event. The crowd delivered with very few moments of evident fatigue. I wouldn't be surprised to see next year's show do another gigantic number after the success of this one. In regards to All Out, all I can say is good luck to those on the card, all 6 of them so far. Very intrigued to see just what they promote in the coming week to try and stop the show from seeing a record low number of buys. Well, All Out is, they've got their work cut out for them this week, Way.
Yeah, I don't predict a record low buy rate. We'll see, dude. Like we know this audience is very savvy, and if they present a good enough card, even in a short amount of time, I think it could do relatively successful.
Chris writes, I think every match delivered, many exceeded expectations, especially Joe and Punk, which I wasn't anticipating, having not been a fan of their Owen Hart tournament match. This was significantly better, but overall, I was a little let down that the only newsworthy thing that happened was backstage antics that shouldn't have happened. No official debut, no return, no major angle, and most importantly, nothing set up for All Out or even Dynamite. I don't remember a single pay-per-view that hasn't had something drawing fans to Wednesday. It was just a little surprising. I'm not as critical about setting up your free television. But All Out, yeah, certainly I think you want to have a direction coming out of it that even if not announced, you kind of know, okay, these are all the key directions that you can see. And beyond like Omega and Takeshita and, to a lesser degree, Moxley and Cassidy, to me, those aren't the matches that are selling the pay-per-view next week. They're nice, complimentary, like higher matches on the card, but they're not, to me, the weight of the card has yet to be announced.
The Punk match is most interesting to me because you have Collision to do your heavy building, right, and that's the day before. So I wonder if they'll use Dynamite to announce something for CM Punk.
They should not be waiting till the night before. That would be crazy.
Or just even like maybe something you throw online.
You just announce on Monday or something. Yeah. I don't believe beyond the 2 matches that they added, I don't believe there have been any other announcements for the pay-per-view. Next one here is from Ben, who says, I was at both Rev Pro and All In. All In was a spectacle. I'm interested to see how loud the crowd was on TV. The main event today was fantastic. Great storytelling from Cole and MJF. I didn't know what was going to happen. Other highlights for me were the tag title match and Ospreay against Jericho. I was a bit down on Jericho being against Ospreay beforehand, but happy to be proven wrong. Rev Pro was great too, and a much better view for me was a bit far away. Will against Shingo at Rev Pro was immense, as you'd expect. Yeah, I'll definitely write my thoughts in the update tomorrow, but yeah, Will and Shingo was really great. Not their best, but it was a really entertaining match for the live crowd. But I thought the match that I saw the most buzz for was Ishii and Luke Jacobs. To me, it was like a career-making match for Luke Jacobs. So someone I think beyond just British fans will kind of have their eyes on. And it was awesome atmosphere, like 4,000 people at the Copper Box Arena. It felt like it was their biggest show by far. So, and definitely had a lot of buzz for it, piggybacking. And the last word goes to a Brian from New Jersey. I feel that some matches had time and could have been devoted. Some matches could have had time devoted to others. Stadium Stampede to me was a combination of diminishing returns and too many close calls. I'm glad Penta wasn't actually hurt, and I liked how it ended. The first 3 matches in the main event were my favorites of the night. All right, and there are all of our feedback questions and calls, and quickly just going over, this is what we do have for All Out next week with Luchasaurus and Darby Allin for the TNT title, Miro against Powerhouse Hobbs, Chris Statlander against Ruby Soho for the TBS title, Orange Cassidy against it'll be Orange Cassidy or Penta defending the international title against Jon Moxley, and Kenny Omega against Konosuke Takeshita. More announcements to come in the days and week to come. But there you go. That is All In. One of our 3 pay-per-views in a 8-day span, 7-day span.
That is right. Yeah, we'll be very busy next weekend, as we will for the rest of time. But right now, go to postwrestling.com and take some time out to read John Pollock's very well researched write-up on the career of Terry Funk. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. It was I was very happy to put that story out, and a lot of some great editing assistance from the great Neil Flanagan, who's been our correspondent tonight from the press conference. I mean, the man is just a true hero. Neil Flanagan.
Yes.
Not too elderly looking either, by the way. Took you a second there. Go
Very
on.
good.
I'm more on top of your shows than you are.
I didn't think you listened, so
I listen to everything you do. Okay. So there you go, everyone. We went super long tonight, but we appreciate all of the feedback and love to hear from people that were at the show. I would say overall, this was a very successful night for AEW. It remains to be seen what the buys come in at, but I mean, certainly AEW moving forward, like this was a big success for them to the point that they have booked the stadium for a year out. And you will have a lot of people coming out of this, whether they attended or not, that will build trips around this for next year. I think like there was only positive buzz for it. And for a lot of reasons, they're probably picking a very safe city to try this again at in a year's time.
Yeah.
And we may have conflicting opinions on whether the Labor Day tradition is as wise a repeat, but we will see what happens next week. And lots to come. Check out postwrestling.com, and Wai and I will be back Monday night immediately after Raw. And if you can't get enough of us, do join postwrestlingcafe.com. Multiple bonus shows per week. This week, we will be doing an Ask Away mailbag show where you send in any and all questions of any variety, and Wai and I go through each one with some of the best, most thought out analytical answers you could find. And that will be out on Thursday. Every Friday, we're live at 10 Eastern after Rewind to SmackDown. And of course, the great Kate from Montreal and John Cena live Saturday nights with Collision Course to get you all set. And they will be going head to head with us next Saturday because we got Payback Saturday and then All Out on Sunday night. But you know what? That's why God created 24 hours in a day where you can fit it all in. There's never enough wrestling. There's never enough wrestling chatter about wrestling. So thank you to everybody for joining us, and thank you to Wai for being a trooper tonight, as he's got the death look on his face. But we all appreciate the man's dedication to bringing you the best show possible. So a big thank you to Wai, and to all of you, goodbye.